Sort of Coming Chapter 1197. Chapter 1197. Some cultivators like to hide in peace, and some like to join in the fun. Beidasheng Lu Daochen belongs to the latter. What's more, Lu Daochen is a lively person. After all, there are not many Qi trainers who can be as famous as Gu Qingsong in the Haoran world. He was once suppressed by the great celestial master of Longhu Mountain in person, and finally stopped for more than 1,000 years. Lu Daochen changed his name to Lu Qiqing since he exited the customs. It seems that he has grown a lot, it seems. This time, Lu Qiqing first took a cross-continental ferry to the northernmost point of Aquarius Island, and then transferred to a Changchun Palace ferry to go south, where he would disembark at Nujiadu and take a trip to Luopao Mountain. Today Lu Qiqing left the house and came to the bow of the boat, leaning on the railing, pretending not to hear those whispers. There are restaurants and restaurants on the ferry. Lu Qiqing often shows up and is used to it. As the owner of Lioli Pavilion and the younger brother of the city owner of Baidi City, Lu Qiqing, who was previously abiding by his brother's law, devoted his best efforts to assist his nephew, Fu Xing, to choose the site together to create the next sect. Because the entire Baidi City was divided into two by the seniors, and the property that went to the younger disciple Gu Kan was obviously far less than the elder disciple's Fu Yu, Lu Qiqing was of course happy to see it happen. He doesn't think that his upper sect is strong, and his family is strong. Gu Kan's sect can only be regarded as the lower sect of the ancestral family, authentic Beidasheng, so the face is all in him and his nephew. The silent superior is here. This time, he took a break from his busy schedule, returned to Aquarius, and revisited the old place, with mixed feelings. Once in a deserted temple, I was stabbed by someone. Later, there was a little conflict with a scholar surnamed Li from Lizhu Cave in the Su family's Fox Kingdom in Qingfeng City. Nothing, just don't know each other. Senior brother still takes care of himself very much, and chooses to let senior sister Han Ko's assist Gu Kan. If he is to follow Gu Kan's side, Lu Qiqing will pretend to be dead. Senior brother, you can just empty the entire White Emperor city and drive out all the cultivators and the other people. But as long as the Lioli Pavilion is still in the White Emperor city, I am here, and honestly continue to accompany you to practice together. That's it. Lu Qiqing, who is now wearing a pink Taoist robe, is simply flamboyant and doesn't mind being recognized at all. Because senior sister Han Chaosa leaked a big inside story to him not long ago, a secret letter, just 3 words. Brother, 3. At that time, Lu Qiqing was holding the secret letter, trembling all over, and tears welling up in his eyes. He was happier than he had broken through and ascended one after another. Lu Qiqing, who originally felt that his current state was not very good, felt that I was very good. Heaven and earth are big, where can't you go? Not to mention the 9 continents, the Western Buddhist country, the 14 states of the Qingming world, all of them can go. Little treasure island, what can I do? Back then, when I took 2 disciples here, Lu Qiqing almost forgot all these years. On this trip to Aquarius, Lu Qiqing mainly wanted to catch up with his brother Chen Pingan. Last time, in the Baozhai opened by Zhang Ji in Parrot Island, Master Chen Shan had no cash at hand, so he and Mrs. Yan Yan borrowed some immortal money. The money was not much, but the brothers clearly settled the account, so this visit, if your kid misunderstands me as a debt collector, then Chen Pingan thinks so. On the previous cross-continental ferry, Lu Qiqing met a few new friends on the road, and they agreed to change the boat to visit the old site of Lizhu Cave. The reason why Lu Qiqing left the house was because according to the records in the booklet, there was a sea of clouds in front of him, which was condensed all the year round, and the ferry from the mountain sailed into it to ask for a good omen. A group of male and female monks came to Pavilion Master Lu one after another. All the stars held the moon, willing to be green leaves, a jade pure realm and several earth immortals. They were all well-known Qi practitioners in their respective hometowns in Middle-earth and Shenzhou. Gu Pan Zixiong, chatting and laughing. Among the crowd, of course, Lu Qiqing, who was dressed in pink, was the most eye-catching. After chatting and talking, apart from the fact that the Confucian temple was sealed as Yueshanjin, the young hidden officials and Luo Pao Mountain must not be avoided. In Lu Qiqing's words, whenever he mentioned Qin Pin Gon, he always had a light and calm expression, and he had a homely tone. I remember when we first met, Qin Shanzhu had just left his hometown. Although he carried the sword, he had not practiced the sword at that time. Qin Pin Gon was not good at words at that time, and was rather dull, but someone Lu, I had long seen that his achievements in the future would be extraordinary, and he often invited him to drink. At that time, Qin Pin Gon, who was still a boy with straw sandals, often drank my mountain wine while listening to me talk about the legend of the mountain, and he was fascinated by it. It can be said that the group of Middle-earth monks is like listening to the scriptures. Because they really can't imagine that the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the close disciple of Wen Xing's lineage, actually had a bleak time like being a follower and drinking wine. On this ferry, there was a middle-aged man in a cotton-padded jacket and an old mink hat. He was tall and dull-looking. He was inconspicuous in the market, but here he was similar to Lu Qiqing. However, compared to the Xianjia ferry, which is a mixed bag of fish and dragons, the ferry on the mountain is like a sieve, sifting out many crooks who hope to hit luck in the heap of gods. After all, if you want to take the ferry, you have to give some real money. Like Daoist Xian Wei, the current gatekeeper of Luo Pao Mountain, he was screened out. Occasionally, when crossing the road, he just watched the ups and downs of the ferry, and learned a lot. So this man on this Changchun Palace ferry, even if he was poor and sour, didn't dare to provoke him. It was the contemporary head of the Luo Mahe family, Lu Su, the Yuaning Jing Jianxiu. The last time I had a drink with Qin Pin Gon in the capital, Yuan Xian had already returned to Luzhou in Beiju, and Lu Su wanted to go to Fu's house in the old Longqing, so he continued south by himself. Originally, he didn't plan to make a special trip to Luo Pao Mountain, but Yuan Xian sent a secret letter to Lu Su on the way back, saying that the family had just confirmed something, a big happy event. Yuan Yizhu did not do anything without any warning, and she was already free from the harassment of the nightmare overnight. The nightmare that had plagued her for 100 years seemed to disappear in an instant. There is no need for Yuan Shi to ask an expert to investigate this matter, because after Yuan Yichu slept in an extremely sweet, dreamless sleep, the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm was loosened, and she had already begun to officially retreat. In the letter, Yuan Xian asked Lu Su to tell Shanzhu Qin that no matter whether Yuan Yizu's retreat was successful or not, the Sanlang Temple must be very grateful in the near future. So Lu Su planned to go to Luo Pao Mountain to help bring the words to him. As for the in the pink robe, Lu Su recognized the identity of the other party at a glance, and the latter was surrounded by a bunch of people holding stinky feet, and there was no taboo to speak. Lu Su felt that he was not a commoner. Lu Su was not sure whether Lu Qiqing's words were true or false, so he planned to see Qin Pin Gon and ask again. To be honest, Lu Su felt that if Qin Pin Gon really knew such a friend and was a good friend, then pretty crappy. A ferry sailed into the white clouds. The so-called Xianjia scenic spot, the drunkard passed by after a few sips. Afterwards, Lu Qiqing and the others saw the man in the padded jacket again at the ferry restaurant. He was still drinking alone. It didn't matter if someone put together a table. There was a beautiful female nun who had a unique vision. She felt that this man might be a big fish. Sitting at the table with the jug in hand, Lu Su drank a bowl of wine, took out 2 snows from his sleeves to spend money, and reported the name of the wooden sign hanging in the ferry house, saying that he just had some spare money. The female cultivator was stunned and angry when she heard the words. She picked up the wine bowl and poured it over. Lu Su just lowered her head to avoid the wine, and she had already got up and left. In fact, if you really think about it, it's not Lu Su's incomprehension of style and abrupt beauty, but the room he lives in. It's the cheapest kind of house on this ferry, and there are several people living there. Lu Qiqing thought it was interesting, so he raised the wine bowl and said hello from a distance. Lu Su didn't look at him, just drinking for himself. Lu Qiqing didn't take it seriously, he still had some energy. At noon that day, the ferry finally approached Pian Mountain. The last time I went with Gu Kan to Huaihuang County, Lu Qiqing didn't dare to stroll around because the water was too deep. Now, looking at the outline of the town surrounded by clouds and fog, I don't think it's too big, a palm-sized sight. The ferry slowly docked at Nujiadu, and it was firmly anchored after a few bumps. Lu Qiqing walked to the deck of the building and stretched. In the flow of people, Lu Su rubbed his old mink hat, put his hands in his sleeves, and walked with his shoulders slightly sideways against the railing to make way for others. At this moment, the entire Nujiadu just disembarked and those who were about to board began to turn their heads to look at the same place. A transcontinental ferry, which can be called a behemoth, came galloping, from the size of a mustard seed to the size of a bowl, and in a flash it approached the sky above the old Liju cave. Feng Yuan cross-continental ferry, a Niujiao ferry was wrapped by a huge ferry, and the clouds and mist swelled, the mountain wind burst, and the heaven and earth aura swayed. On the bow railing of Feng Yuan ferry, stood a boy in white with a mole between his eyebrows, holding the back of his head with both hands, and his two snow-white sleeves fell naturally. Lu Su narrowed his eyes, but he was looking at a higher place on Feng Yuan ferry. The boy in white shook his sleeves and snapped his fingers. The next moment, the entire ferry that was originally dazzled by the sun was plunged into darkness, and a ferry larger than Feng Yuan ferry removed its blindfolds, and appeared on Nujiadu like a mountain topping down. This ferry stood tall with a large pole, with Qingping Jianzong written on the front and Bingding written on the reverse. Sword boat. It turned out to be a legendary Dali sword boat. The Dali dynasty once teamed up with the Mahishts to create two battlefield weapons that can be called the treasure of the country. One is a mountain ferry that can carry tens of thousands of Dali cavalry. At the end of the curtain, only 46 sword boats were seen. Each sword boat is named after one of the 60 jiazi. After the Battle of Leilongking, in the north, until Dali Paidu and Dadu battlefields, according to the outside world, more than 30 sword boats crashed successively. In the large-scale Battle of Jianzhou dispatched more than 50 ships at the same time. As for the high cost of each ferry, the outside world simply cannot estimate it. Just talking about one thing, you will know how expensive each Dali sword boat is. Every military armor in the world is a precious treasure on the mountain, and a sword boat is like a chi trainer, just like wearing a pair of the robe generated by the soldier Kamru. As for how the money came, they are all from Aquarius. From the imperial study of the Dali dynasty, from the treasury to all the surnames of Shangzhou, Manchu civil and military, to the sects on the mountain, the dignitaries under the mountain, and the mountains and rivers of one continent. Screaming. Complaining. Never had. At that time, the Dali dynasty, which was one country and one continent, at least not on the bright side, just because the national teacher was Cui Yu. Those who fled, or migrated to other continents, the Xianfu sects and the super-rich, the Dali dynasty did not stop them, such as the fat man who lost a lot of weight and spit out a lot. When the dust settled, this group of people also quietly returned to Aquarius, but secretly lost some weight. Just talking about the countries south of Dadu, why are they so noisy? This group of people who are unwilling to spend money, a lot of fuel. Lu Qiqing saw over the ferry boat, beside the boy in white, there was a woman with a narrow knife hanging from the waist and a silver wine gourd in red, Li Baoping. She has an eldest brother named Li Shixing, and the scholar seems to say that he wants to play chess with his senior brother. On the fairy side, there is also Jun Qian, a burly figure, a young man in a mink hat with delicate eyebrows. Lu Qiqing heard an anecdote mentioned by his senior sister Han Xiaosa, and thought it was funny at the time. White also. And standing beside Jun Qian, there is Chen Pingan's first disciple, Pei Qian, a martial artist, and next to Pei Qian, there is a short old man wearing a purple Taoist robe, Fu Lu Yuxian. Li Huai and Lu Qiqing also recognized it. The old blind man from Shirwanda Mountain is a disciple who both opens and closes the door. I heard from my senior sister that the old blind man begged this person to be his apprentice. What's more, the fox beside the young man in the Confucian shirt remembered the Zilongtai in the sea back then, and Lu Qiqing even remembered that she was with a soft and weak woman, who called her brother by her first name. Lu Qiqing swallowed and tugged at the neckline of the pink Taoist robe. Fortunately, Chen Yingguan and I are close friends who are irresistible. Coincidentally, at this moment, a blushing earth immortal cultivator asked, Pavilion Lu, when will we go to Luopao Mountain to find Master Qin Shan for a drink? Can we really drink Qingshan mountain wine? The boy in white smiled and looked at Lu Qiqing, Jun Qian and Bai Yi, and they also started to look at Lu Qiqing, especially the one named Pei Qian, who started squinting at Pavilion Master Lu. By the water of Chuchi Lake, Chen Pingan and Yuan Huang borrowed a fishing rod and some lees and corn. Zhong Qian, who was long in coming, accidentally caught a glimpse of the figure in green shirt by the lake, with a long stature, rushed to the lake and squatted, wondering, Qin Shanju, why didn't you go to Demugwen, but instead did you catch any fish here? Chen Pingan smiled and said, go later, so as not to get in the way there. Zhong Qian nodded and said, that's the truth. Zhong Qian was too lazy to use the martial arts method that focused on the sound. This golden-bodied martial artist is recognized as the #1 martial artist in the world. Just because he is young and not a chi refiner, he is not as famous as Gao Jun of the Hushan school. But don't look at Wu Kei at the Hostel Island Wine Bureau, let the old guy talk about it in front of Zhong Qian. Zhong Qian has a good temper, but in this matter, it is best to keep your mouth shut. Before Zhong Qian entered the 7th realm, almost all of her actions were because the opponent's mouth was not clean. Zhong Qian asked, didn't Mr. Zhu come with you? Chen Pingan smiled and said, Zhongzhongsher, you can. Do you want to take a cook by your side to travel around the mountains and water? Zhong Qian grinned, I've eaten Mr. Zhu's food, and my mouth has been raised, and now I don't eat anything. Yuan Huang couldn't help turning his head to look at Zhong Qian. The goddess of the beggar field, the goddess of the mountain, has a look, and the other 2 talismans must be bought. Zhong Qian glanced at the young man sitting on the ground with a knife beside him, and asked, who are you? Wu Jiang said concisely, Wu Jiang, swordsman. Zhong Qian nodded and said, young and promising, I have heard the name for a long time. Practice the sword well and strive to be the first. Wu Jiang frowned, it's easy to say. For the sake of being Qin Jiangxian's friend, I don't care about you. It seems that the warrior has reached the 1st floor of the golden body, holding his breath for a while, and seeing the living creatures between heaven and earth is a new thing, and he can vaguely see the route of some breaths. Yuan Huang asked, are you Zhong Qian? Zhong Qian answered nonsense and gave a thumbs up, no your name is Yuan Huang. Ren Xia is full of zeal and greed, just like the characters written in ancient books. Yuan Huang smiled and said, I don't dare to do it. Chen Pingan helped introduce, the one next to me is the goddess of the mountain from the begging flower field in Dai Mountain. She smiled and said, my real name is Yuan Jiaocao with a small green waist. Zhong Qian said solemnly, I haven't heard of it before. As long as I pass by in the future, I will definitely go to your mountain temple to worship incense. The mountain goddess smiled and nodded softly, it's easy to say. In the end, Zhong Qian is in love, the shadow of the famous tree of people, and the name of the number one in the world of martial arts today. It is not a joke. The mixed tourists on the shore of Chuchi Lake came here one after another. Some came to chat a few words, and some held their fists and signed up. After coming and going, Zhong Qian was surrounded by a lot of people, both warriors and chi refiners, and they were all prominent figures on the mountains and rivers and lakes. It's not easy to pull his face down and chase people away. Zhong Qian glanced at Shanzhu Qin carefully. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded, indicating that it doesn't matter. The chat was in full swing. During the period, the green-shirt fisherman interjected a few words, but no one answered, and continued to talk about each other. Zhong Qian felt a little nervous, but he was not afraid that Chen Pingan would get angry. But if this kind of thing goes around and is heard by Xiaoli, then at the dinner table in Luopa Mountain, he will not be ridiculed for using the moon as a meal and a side dish. So that Chen Lingjun can spare him. And that white-haired boy who seems to be some kind of pedigree officer, who just didn't engrave "I am a dog-legged dog-leg in the sky" on his forehead, can he let him go? Chen Pingan turned his head and said with a smile, "Isn't this Lu Shixian? Why did you come here?" A man in a padded jacket came by the river, like a ghost, quietly approached here. Lu Su squatted aside with a dark face, and said, "Yuan Yizhu has solved the trouble. Yuan Xian asked me to thank you, and the Sanlang temple promises that there will be a reward." Chen Pingan wondered, "What's the matter? I didn't do anything." Lu Su said indifferently, "I don't know. Anyway, Yuan Yizhu has started to retreat, and it seems that he has a good grasp of it." Chen Pingan thought for a while, and roughly guessed that it was Lu Chen's handwriting, but Chen Shanzhu knew with his knees that Headmaster Lu must be holding back, and he didn't know when, where, and who would make trouble. Lu Su asked, "You know Lu Qiqing very well?" Chen Pingan nodded, "I've known each other for a long time, really familiar." Lu Su shook his head. Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Is he on the mountain now?" Lu Su nodded, "I was on the same ferry earlier, and when I came here, I was in high spirits." "This guy almost didn't tell people that he was your boxing and swordsman master when you were young, but when you got to Nujiadu, you were scared and stupid." Chen Pingan said, "It's his style." Because the two sides chatted, they didn't use the means of concentrating their voices or speaking from their hearts, so it's fine for some people who have a heart to hear them. The Sanlang Temple, Yuan Yizhu, and Lu Qiqing's are all dojos that have never been heard of. And characters. As for the person whose surname is Lu or Lu, is it Shixian? Lu Su asked in his heart, "I heard that the highest realm in this blessed land is the Golden Core." Stopping martial arts, playing a Golden Core is not the same as playing, one-handed against the enemy, all worried that the shot will not be able to master the strength. Chen Pingan nodded, "She is not at a high level for the time being, and her achievements in the future should not be underestimated." Lu Su hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Don't be too soft-hearted." Chen Pingan restrained his smile and nodded vigorously. Lu Su said angrily, "Damn it, what if I didn't enter the summer palace? My friend's suggestion, I would like to hear it." Chen Pingan shook his fists and said, "Listen, why don't you listen? You must listen." Lu Su said, "I've finished my business in Beipingzu, and I may take a detour to Fuzhou first. Is there anything I need to tell you?" Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Let the scrofularia and the others be withdrawn, and then thank me again, and remember to remind me not to bring gifts when I come to Luopa Mountain next time." Lu Su was speechless for a moment. After a moment of silence, he got up and said, "It's too lively on your mountain. I'm not used to it, so I won't stay." Chen Pingan didn't hold back. "When you arrive at the old Dragon City, you can ask Fan Air for a drink." Lu Su glanced at Chen Pingan with distrust on his face. Chen Pingan laughed angrily. "I personally introduced it to Lu Shixian's friend. can he be the same as Lu Xiaobao? Lu Su nodded, it's the best, it's enough to cheat Lu Jinglong. Next time you come to my house, remember to ask me for a drink. Chen Pingan smiled and said, okay, yes, definitely, drinking wedding wine is the best. The last time I heard Yuan Xian say that now Beiju Luzhou is going to marry his daughter and disciple to the family and immortal mansion of Lujiangxian, Luomahi River, and countless others. Lu Su laughed, kicked a big pebble beside his feet into the lake, and left. Chen Pingan scolded, Lu Shixian, why do you owe so much? If you say it lightly, you don't know what to do. If you say the point, you are called ungrateful. Without me, no one would know that you are so talented. Lu Su turned his back to the yin-yang second shopkeeper, raised his arm and raised a finger. Zhong Qian gathered together and asked, Master Chen Shan, who is this? Chen Pingan laughed heartily, the old customer at the Jianqi Great Wall wine shop, surnamed Lu, is Beiju Luzhou Jianqiu. In fact, he is very rich, but he spends money very cheaply. Zhong Qian turned to look at Lu Su, nodded and said, I can tell. Chen Pingan wondered, did you see that he was rich, or did you see that he was kusu? Zhong Qian said, I have money. Chen Pingan asked curiously, how do you see it? At the wine shop back then, only at first glance, Chen Pingan didn't really see that Lu Su was the young master of Luomahi. In fact, if it wasn't for the identity of the wine shop guests, he would have always regarded Lu Su as a pig killer. Too fast to be a pauper. Zhong Qian said, it's not like the old saying, poverty is the prosperity of the scholar, and frugality is the harvest of the farmer. This Lu Jianxian wears an old mink hat that is so worn that he is not willing to lose it. At first glance, he is both poor and frugal. It's not about being rich. Chen Pingan snorted, Master Zhong, it's all right, I didn't realize you were so good at talking before, why don't you talk too much on the mountain? No wonder it was so fun to stay in Luopao Mountain. Zhong Qian said, on our mountain, I don't go out very often. Every time I get to the dinner table, it's too late to eat and drink. What are we talking about? Chen Pingan laughed angrily, you're shameless, what are we on the mountain? You're just a guest for the time being. Zhong Qian snorted, Shanju, we are familiar with each other, and I admire you, but I really don't like to hear these words, why are you an outsider? I am in the house that has belonged to me. I have prepared a few tubs of winter pickles, fermented bean curd and stinky mandarin fish. Chen Pingan suddenly scolded a sissy. Zhong Qian smiled, I'm not angry. As a result, Chen Pingan cursed again. Zhong Qian still had a face full of indifference. Chen Pingan smiled and said, don't care about this in the future, you can care about punching, don't be soft on hitting people, but don't take it seriously in your heart. Zhong Qian hummed. After a moment of silence, Zhong Qian said softly, Master Chen Shan, if I were a woman. Stop. Chen Pingan suddenly got goosebumps, and was so frightened that he almost lost his fishing rod and ran away. Zhong Qian laughed and said, Master Chen Shan, your reasoning is so unreasonable. Chen Pingan rubbed his chin and seemed to be thinking about a problem. Now it was Zhong Qian's turn to panic, so she hurriedly clarified, Chen Shanju, it's a joke, don't take it seriously, I've drunk flower wine and visited brothels, and there are more than one or two confidants in the world. If it wasn't for the turmoil back then, I had to run for my life. I would have been married a long time ago. If you don't believe me, I can take you to meet them. It is no exaggeration. They are all first class and good-looking. She's beautiful, with big breasts. Chen Pingan regained his senses and smiled, it's okay, just now I was a little distracted. Back then in the wine shop, your jokes were just drizzle. A graceful man came to the shore, smiled and clasped his fists and said, I have seen Mr. Chin. The Supreme Emperor of Nanyuan Kingdom, the Chi refiner of the Dragon Gate realm, Wei Liang. Next to him was a girl in a dragon robe who settled on Luodai Island. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded, long time no see. Wei Liang said in his heart, Jiang Shenxi, who is a ghost, has been trying to find revenge with Mr. Chen all these years. Chen Pingan said, is that the scholar from Zhuangyuan Lane who went to Beijing to take the exam? Wei Liang nodded and said, it seems that I am overthinking it. The girl in the dragon robe's eyes sparkled, and she asked, are you the Qin Jianxian who made a lot of trouble in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom and killed Ding Ying at the head of the city? Don't you all say that people who have attained Taoism on the mountain can keep their faces and have skills, and Eugenie of the Hushan school can even be rejuvenated? The former young sword fairy in front of me, what's going on, has a slight frost on the temples, and it's a shame that his face is not visible. Old. Chen Ping was placed on deaf ears. She blinked, hey, why are you pretending to be deaf and dumb? Wei Liang reprimanded with a straight face, don't be rude. She pouted. What's so amazing, you Wei Liang is the Supreme Emperor of Nanyuan country, this man in blue shirt is nothing more than the Supreme Emperor of this world. Zhong Qian glanced at Wei Liang, who seemed to have a dragon-like figure coiling around his shoulders, and the girl in a dragon robe who was said to be a four-legged snake in the mountains, an eel worshipping the moon in the field, and a green snake in the lake, who was unknown. Zhong Qian can now be sure that her real body is a successfully refined green snake. In fact, Zhong Qian's eyesight has little to do with becoming a martial artist in the golden body, but has something to do with his natural ability to look at the breath. The girl in the dragon robe pretended to be surprised and gave a wow. Zhong Qian, the great grandmaster of Zhong, is the #1 mile in the world. He has long admired the famous name, like thunder. Zhong Qian smiled and said, you're welcome, the little girl calls me a sissy. The girl in the dragon robe covered her heart and said with a smile, what a murderous aura. Wu Jiang strained his face. If it wasn't for hearing that this little girl is a Taoist who is proficient in water law, and her realm is not much lower than that of the Hushan school Gao Jun, Wu Jiang would have stood up and spoken. Chen Pingan always held the pole, facing the lake, and said with a smile, Wei Liang, you brought the people, so you don't care about her. Wei Liang clenched his fists and apologized, she is rebellious by nature, and I neglected to discipline her. Chen Pingan snorted. Wei Liang explained, she's used to speaking casually, and I will definitely restrain her when she goes back. The implication is that in the public eye, Mr. Chen sold me some thin noodles. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I know my identity clearly, but I still have such eyes in the sky, and I can imagine how rebellious I am in private. It's still the same after all these years, Wei Liang. It seems that you say such things, it's hard to believe. Wei Liang's face suddenly became difficult to look at. The girl in the dragon robe narrowed her long and narrow eyes, and she just said a few words, this Chen Jianxian, who is said to be God, is going to fight and kill. Chen Pingan suddenly raised the rod, and a fishing line made a sound of breaking through the air, instantly wrapping the neck of the girl in the dragon robe, and throwing the rod again, the latter beaten into the nest. The girl in the dragon robe slammed heavily on the lake that looked like frozen ice and fainted on the spot. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I failed to compete for Gao Jun. The first one to form a pill is to blame others in private. How dare you have the face to blame me? Wei Liang, did Luopa Mountain give you a face? Wei Liang was covered in sweat, and immediately bowed his head and folded his fists. Wei Liang dare not. I begged Qin Shanju to calm down. You, Wei Liang, don't participate in this Demugwan discussion, and immediately return to your Nanyuan Imperial Mausoleum dojo. Chen Pingan put the fishing rod at his feet, stood up, and disappeared without a trace. Dressed in a long gown, covered with a blue gauze robe, and carrying a sword in the night. Wei Liang didn't dare to look up and said in a trembling voice, "Follow the decree of the Mountain Lord." Zhong Qian's expression was the same as usual. "I had seen the world in our Luopa mountain." Wu Jiang nodded secretly. It was indeed Chen Jianxian. It was a fake. Yuan Huang had a headache, and felt that the talisman in the picture box seemed a little hot. The goddess of Qiwachang Mountain stares round her eyes. Is it true that the real person does not show his appearance? As for the previous group chatting around Zhong Qian, they are all looking at each other at this moment, at a loss as to what to do. Is there still time? The earthquake trembled like thunder on the ground, the wind was strong, and everyone on the shore kept retreating. From the shore of the Autumn Chi Lake to the Demugwan in the center of the lake, the sword light swept away like a blue rainbow. Fox Country. In his secret room, a red candle as thick as an arm burned like tears. The woman's heart-rending wailing, weeping, and cursing came one after another, and eventually the movement became smaller and smaller. The main members of the cultivators of the palm discipline of the Fox Kingdom gathered here. Early this morning, they began to torture a traitor who colluded with outsiders. It's a big deal, and they can't help it. The poor woman, who was bruised and dying, had her hands and feet nailed to the wall. The pair of crescent white embroidered shoes on his feet were already soaked with blood. She is a fox in the cave dwelling. She was able to leave the Fox Country as usual a few years ago and go to the outside world to experience Taoism, but it was during this period that she dared to carry the Taoist guardian's elders and secretly hooked up with her. A Qi trainer from the Hushan faction passed on the information of the Hu Kingdom several times. Except for the prisoner who was being executed by hanging on the wall, a young man with a soldering iron inserted into the brazier, 2 tables were placed in the spacious secret room, and the rest of the cultivators were sitting. Hu Guozanglu, an old woman with a straight waist, held an iron whisk, and habitually grasped the silk thread of the whisk, making a slight rustling sound. The old woman must be personally responsible for this interrogation. At this moment, her face is ashen, and she is extremely ugly. The lord of the country just left, and this scandal happened. What a shame! The old woman was staring at the woman who deserved to be stabbed with thousands of knives. She was so daring, she even dared to pass on such secrets as, a blue-shirted guest visited the state owner's business last night. Did you write it? If Lua Peishan finds out about this, let alone her Jindan realm who is the master of law, I am afraid that the country's Lord Peixiang will not be able to get rid of the relationship, and the entire Fox Country will suffer. On the table of the old woman, there is a female cultivator of the Fox Country who is responsible for writing and recording. In fact, there are not a few words written on the paper. Sitting next to her is an old man who specializes in punishment. He is an elderly male fox with a low level. Neither is in the middle 5 realms, but he can't stand this guy with a lot of tricks. He is highly valued by the old lady in charge of the Fox Country. He never goes out. It is really a Fox Country. Of course, he always acted impartially, but if the problem is that he died at his hands, or even shed a layer of skin if he didn't die, they wouldn't feel that way. In his entire life, he has dealt with breaking the boundary of cultivation, and his aptitude is not good, and he has nothing to do with it. The old man is like a fish in water here. What to do when he goes out? All kinds of faces, figures, styles, no matter how good-looking women, he has seen them here too. Patriarch Zhang Lv agreed. After his young life has expired, he has become a ghost. He will help him gather his soul and change into a fox skin, so he can continue to stay here. On the other table, there were 2 beautiful women who were incompatible with this secret room. In the Fox Country, where there is no shortage of beauties, they are both outstanding and beautiful. It was the 2 proud disciples of the Lord Peixiang, Luo Fume and his junior sister Qiu Qing. Qiu Qing, from the state of Dongfu, has no Taoist name yet. She is nicknamed Xiaoshuan by Master Peixiang. Senior sister Luo Fume, nicknamed Yu Tiao, nicknamed Ugly Newer. Luo Fume is not yet 30, and she is already in the Dragon Gate realm, and she has a place in the Fox Kingdom Patriarch Hall. At first, there were very few Earth immortals, and Luo Fume also had a hidden identity. She was the deputy of the ancestor of Hu Guozhang, who was in charge of espionage. Occasionally, he will practice his hands and personally interrogate the forbidden monks. At that time, the fox skin talisman beauty that Zhou's family in Qingfeng City sold to one continent, as the fox skin of the talisman. The origin of this thing is not just the molding of the fox monks, many of which are brand new fox skins peeled off with blood dripping. In the early years, there was a fox country with many hilltops. There were many different Dao lineages, and the relationship between them was discordant. What was the death and injury of fighting in private? There were even wars involving hundreds of Fox clan chi practitioners at every turn. Pei Xiang, the son of the country's lord, can't control all the forces. She only needs to guard her own 1/3 of an acre of land, not to mention the rest of the mountains. It's that vicious-hearted housewife of Qingfeng City. Therefore, the Su clan in Qingfeng City never cared about the fighting within the Fox country, killing them. Isn't it all about adding a piece of fox skin, and it's just piles of fairy money? Anyway, as long as the door to the gentle township of the hero tomb is always open, the members of the Fox clan can keep spreading their branches. Greed does not go. There are young fox charms every year, one after another, and the lives of adult male foxes are especially worthless. Whenever there is a dispute, they always die first. There have even been 2 cases of overcrowding in the Fox country in history, but it's not troublesome. Qingfeng City caused 2 wars within the Fox country, killing each other into a river of blood. The young girl Qiu Qing was also a monk in the line of palm discipline. At this moment, she was sitting upright, not looking sideways, staring at the tortured woman. She recognized that when they met, the girls would call the other party Sister Song and chat a few words. In Qiu Qing's opinion, Sister Song is a cheerful, gentle-looking woman. She shouldn't be hung on the wall and cut off her tendons. Her body was branded in many places by the hot iron, which was terrible and shocking. The whole secret room exudes a smell of burnt flesh. She is different from senior sister Luo Fume. She is here today because of her duty and she has to come. As for the punishments used on Sister Song, she could not speak of fear. The girl just watched the whole process quietly and never felt creepy, but she was just unhappy in her heart. Seeing these pictures for the first time, the girl would not feel nauseated or the like, which surprised the senior sister who had been waiting for a good show, saying that she was a hot-faced and cold-hearted talent. Luo Fume rested her cheeks with one hand, looking very absent-minded. She lowered her head and gently rubbed the fingernails of her remaining fingers with her thumb. It was coded that she had just died before she came to prison. It is a good thing made by the Fox country's own secrets. It picks hundreds of flowers, and women apply nail polish to aphrodisiac. It works better than any aphrodisiac. A small box, the market price of Qingfeng City in the past, can sell more than a dozen snow money, and there is no market for it. On the bright side, the Songlai country Hushan faction, together with Gao Jun, has a total of 16 qi refiners, and they belong to the only one in the blessed land. In this first-class blessed land, other sects and forces, such as mountain monarchs, gods, emperors and generals, may need to look up to the Hushan sect. Fox country doesn't need it. There is only one Hushan faction with Jindan sitting on the top of the mountain. What is it? In the Hugua Patriarchal Hall, half of the cultivators were sent there to be guests, without the need for the country's Lord Pei Xiang to follow. I am afraid that the Hushan faction could become the old Huangli. The old woman asked in a deep voice, Song Jiashu, why don't you say it? Anyway, it's a dead end, isn't it better to die comfortably? The woman named Song on the wall, Hume, was speechless, but she still tried her best to raise her eyelids and spit out a mouthful of blood. As the host of this cage, the old man stood up, rubbed his hands, and was eager to try. "Hu Zhonglu, why don't you let me come? The apprentice's ability is not good, he is a master, and he has a few unique skills, and he has to earn face back." Especially today, Luo Fumius were also present, which made him even more excited. He always felt that it was more exciting than fighting on the bed. The fun here is not enough for outsiders. Of course, he didn't dare to let Luo Fume know about his hobby. Or does she actually know and like it? Hey, that plump fox knows it but doesn't say it's the best, it's just a flirtation of fellow people. The old woman turned to look at the table next door. "Luo Fume, what do you say? It's your turn." Luo Fume was slightly surprised, raised her head, and glanced at it. "I thought it was over." In fact, apart from the first secret letter, the contents of which were unknown, the second secret letter sent by Song Jiaxu had already been intercepted by Hu Gua, and the next few letters she sent were all written by Luo Fume. The previous secret letter to Luo Fume was filled with words that could not be combined into a single sentence. Obviously, there was an ancestral book between her and the adulterer, which needed a third party to translate. Books can decipher the content. But Luo Fume, who likes to read miscellaneous books the most, cannot help. In the words of Master, "My ugly slave was born to eat this bowl of rice." In Song Jiaxu's boudoir, there are not many books in the collection, just the 20 or so books, all of which were quietly entered by the monks of the Palm discipline when she was out, and recorded the titles of the books. It was copied in the book, and all the copies were handed over to Luo Fume. In addition, Luo Fume did not have to work in vain for the Taoist secretaries of the Taoism where Song Jiaxu is located. For example, Luo Fume and the man were in charge of several esoteric techniques at the top of the mountain. Hu Xian, the predecessor of the money bag of the Fox country, swore that he would not learn it. However, Luo Fume did not reveal the secret technique. Originally, she wanted to spend more effort and thought. She had to go to the Hushan faction to find some clues, never thought that this guy Song Jiaxu is too stupid. Or is it infatuated, or that the other party is too greedy? Not only do you want to sleep on her body, but also a secret magic technique from the Fox Kingdom. Buy one get one free, it's really a good way to get both people and money. But in this way, it is really not difficult. Luo Fume was not happy at all, but felt very lost. It was boring to solve the case so easily. Taking 10,000 steps back, he said, "Even if there is no clue, then peel the traitor's skin, let her Luo Fume put on the new clothes, go out again, and go to Songlai country for a walk. She doesn't believe it. I can't catch that big fish from Hushan Pai." Although Song Jiaxu and that man belong to the love of men and women, and you love me, but this kind of behavior of trying to steal the secret insiders of other dojos, the secrets of spiritual books, etc., has always been a taboo on the mountain in Haran world. As long as the evidence is conclusive, it is anyone who can raise a teacher to ask for guilt, torn his face and fight, is a teacher who is famous and has reason. When Luo Fume stood up, the old man immediately sat down. The old woman in charge of the law was obviously relieved, and the male fox who executed the execution also put the soldering iron back into the brazier. Luo Fume walked to the brazier and squatted, as if she stretched out her hands to keep warm. She looked up at the woman nailed to the wall, rubbed her hands lightly, and said softly, "My good sister, Qing Ben beautiful, how can you be a thief and not love you? I don't know how much I cherish it, but I want to deceive my master and destroy my ancestors, and implicate a whole lot of children. Your master, several senior sisters and junior sisters, and those who protected the way for you last time, in short none of them want to run away. Especially your master, who always likes to chew his tongue behind his back and scold me with a lot of ugly words. How come he doesn't know anything about the bed? I haven't eaten pork and haven't seen pig run. Listen carefully, and study hard. The woman's voice was hoarse and muffled, but unfortunately it was vague and no one could hear what she was saying, but the content was easy to guess. It was nothing more than begging Luo Fume not to implicate others. Luo Fume stood up, walked to Song Jiashu, raised one foot, and gently kicked the red embroidered shoes soaked in blood on the latter's feet. Luo Fume raised one hand, raised her fingers, shook it, and then he stretched out another hand, and twisted the poor woman's eyelids with his fingers. Luo Fume stood on tiptoe and smiled softly. Open your eyes and see, the color of my nails is exactly the same color as your embroidered shoes. Wait. Come on, your lover will see it too. Then I will take your embroidered shoes with me. After he has seen it, I will peel off his skin bit by bit, tear it apart from the eyebrows, and he turned around, went all the way around his back, and then forked the road to his snow-white belly, tugged with both hands, slammed, stopped, and asked him if it hurt. I'm just curious, the one who deceived you, whether it's with you, or entangled in the bed, how did he make a promise to you? I guess it's that man, with affectionate eyes with a resolute tone. You will definitely let you betray the Fox country alive, hide in the Hushan faction, become a Taoist companion, white-headed concentric, and practice hand in hand. By the way, you are the most proficient Humezi in the Fulong lineage in our Hu kingdom. What you leaked out is this secret book. By the way, you should be born to go to the dragon bed to turn the clouds and rains, that is, he will help you change your face. How about you? I will send you to the Songlai Kingdom's palace to be a concubine, love day and night with the emperor who is still young, have a body like a dragon. Pregnant with a dragon child. Become a queen. Just sleep with a man, and the realm will be reduced. You can improve all the way. Sometimes when you are tired, let a man lie on top of you and move, but you can whip it hard, and you will gasp for a while, and you will stop talking. To ask for mercy. Between the words, Luo Fume was not idle at all, only to see her movements are gentle, and she used her fingernails to open a few small holes on Song Jiashu's body. The blood-stained woman moved her lips slightly, but Luo Fume stretched out her hand to hold her mouth and smiled. It's too late. Does it matter whether you say it or not? Anyway, that man has to die. Before he dies, I have to send a message from Hushan. It's not a loss to ask for a secret technique over there. The woman with the Taoist name Yudiao has hot eyes at the moment. If you help the Fox country add 2 Taoist books, you will earn it. The old woman hesitated and said, as long as Song Jiashu is willing to speak, maybe he can get more news. Luo Fume turned her head, her face full of anger, and scolded, you useless old thing, you dare to teach me to do things. In an instant, Luo Fume stopped talking, her face was snow-white for an instant, and she began to tremble inexplicably. It turned out that outside the fence where the prison was furnished, there stood a man with his arms in his sleeves, looking at her with a smile on his face. Following Luo Fume's line of sight, everyone saw the uninvited guest, and the girl Chiu Qing was exactly the same, turning pale and colorless. He was dressed in a snow-white robe, with a gold hairpin on his head. The man smiled and pulled out his sleeves, handed his palm to Luo Fume's side. His voice was gentle, and he smiled, I'm just watching the fun, and see how the Hu kingdom enforces the family law, you continue. Luo Fume didn't say a word, turned around stiffly, and faced the man. She knelt on the ground on the spot, and at the same time reminded her junior sister, Chiu Qing. If you don't want to die, get down on your knees. Chiu Qing quickly knelt down with her senior sister. This Chen Pingan, who changed from a green shirt to a white robe, ignored Luo Fume and Chiu Qing, just looked at the woman on the wall and asked, do you want to live? The woman shook her head slightly. Chen Pingan asked, want to die? In exchange for others not to be implicated. The woman nodded slightly. Chen Pingan said, then let me help you. The woman nodded again, unable to speak, but her eyes with blood and tears were just looking at that strange man who didn't even know who it was. In this Chen Pingan's eyes, the dying woman was not very angry, her spiritual energy was dissipated, and she was gloomy, but at this moment, only he could see it, brilliance, like a god. Chen Pingan nodded and smiled. It turned out to be you. I thought it was Ching, Ching, Ching Cho. Forget it, even if it's not you, it's still you. From now on, you change your name, it's called Cuibai. If because of this, the real Cuibai would not appear in the Fox country, then she wouldn't be able to be this Tao. Reaching out his hand, Chen Pingan twisted a golden silk thread with his fingers and pulled it gently. Sure enough, on the other end of the long thread, the word falling Gao Jun appeared. Song Jiashu actually didn't have a lover. She was only on the way to practice, and she met Gao Jun, maybe chatting some gossip. Gao Jun gave her some pointers, and she was fascinated by the head of the Hushan faction, willing to take the initiative to reveal the fox inside the backstory to the Hushan faction. But it is also considered a lover. Chen Pingan walked to Luo Fumi's side. Get up, and Qiu Qing, don't stand still. Luo Fumi just knelt on the ground, kowtowed heavily, and said solemnly, this servant does not dare to get up. Chen Pingan said, it's nothing more than performing their duties, please rest assured. Luo Fumi, don't be nervous. In the future, most of the patriarchs of the Hu kingdom will be you. Paixiang sighed, I will help you say hello. So you have to get into the golden core earlier. Luo Fumi then stood up tremblingly, her body was tense, her movements were stiff, and she gave 1,000 blessings. According to the gourd and the scoop, Qiu Qing followed the senior sister to do the same. Chen Pingan said, ask, who did you learn from? Luo Fumi said in a trembling voice, no one teaches these crooked ways, it's the slaves who taught themselves. Chen Pingan smiled and said, aren't you talented? Luo Fumi didn't know how to answer for a while. Chen Pingan asked, just now, I only saved junior sister, but not the rest of the members of the Palm Law lineage. A dead Daoist friend is not a poor Daoist, so who did you learn from? Luo Fumi said cautiously, in the past, the Fox country had such a rotten ethos, not to mention slaves, who also want to seek wealth and risk, and become the law of the palm sooner rather than later. Chen Pingan smiled and said, wealth and honor are sought in danger, but they are all lost in danger. The most troublesome part of these old sayings is that they are only passed on half, word of mouth, and misleading children. Luo Fumi nodded and said, the mountain master's teaching, the slaves remember it, and it will definitely be remembered in my heart. Learn quite fast. As soon as Luo Fumi uttered the word mountain master, all the monks from the Fox country and the old lady in the secret affair all knelt down and made up the ceremony, all of them didn't dare to breathe. I just said that in the Peixiangbai courtyard last night, Luo Fumi was not so timid, she thought that if she didn't see the mountain master, she would never see her again. She was still the direct disciple of the country's master, Peixiang. One of the members of the Patriarch Hall of Luopa Mountain. Then in the secret affairs, these Fox clan Qi trainers who were used to hearing about Qin Yingwen's deeds, finally saw the last hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and how courageous can they be? The female cultivator of the Fox tribe who was in charge of taking the pen and recording was already so frightened that her face was full of tears, but she didn't dare to cry. It's a pity that the Lord Qin Shan has disappeared. As a result, Luo Fumi deliberately stood there and continued chatting with Qin Shanju. She didn't forget her business, and turned around and put the traitor from the Fox Kingdom down from the wall. When the junior sister Qiu Qing winked at her, Luo Fu gave her a white look, stretched out his hand to support Cui Bai. She chatted a few more words, and then coughed, get up, the mountain master is gone. A false alarm, there is no danger. For some people, it can even be said to be a lot of wealth. As for today's work and lack of effort, don't they have a talk that can make the speaker envy and the listener envy? Luo Fumei helped Song Jiashu to sit down at the table. The woman whose hands and feet were covered with nails and had not been pulled out could only lean against the wall. Song Jiashu, I should call you Tsue Bai Daoist friend from now on. You are the lucky one. To be honest, I envy you so much that I want to peel your skin right now. Wear it on yourself. I put the ugly words in front of you. If you dare to live up to the high expectations of the Lord Qin Shanzhu in the future, I will definitely do everything possible to kill you regardless of the cost. Don't be a mute, just squeak and nod. Song Jiashu just stared at this ruthless Luo Fumei. Luo Fumei pinched her chin and tugged, very good, just assume you agree. Song Jiashu could only move his fingers slightly, but he still couldn't raise his hand. Luo Fumei twitched the corners of her mouth, her face full of sarcasm. She leaned forward and whispered a few words in her ear. Anyway, she had something to do with Song Jiashu's preacher and Gao Jun. Song Jiashu was silent. Luo Fumei leaned back, stretched out her fingers with a smile, and tapped lightly on an iron nail on her arm. Song Jiashu was suddenly in pain. Luo Fumei smiled and said, "Ding. First, take Song Jiashu out of the prison and send it back to her own residence to recuperate." After her junior sister Chiu Qing was busy, she fed Song Jiashu a few pills, first carefully removed those nails, and then prepared a bucket of potion and a few bottles of the precious Fox Country Secret. Making plaster, Luo Fumei knelt down on the embroidered stool, opened a booklet, hummed a tune, and began to write down today's experiences with a pen, recording every word and detail of the young hidden officer after he appeared. Empty Pei Xiang Bai. Chen Pingon walked slowly among them. In fact, this lotus root blessed land has hidden secrets and can be regarded as two worlds. But even Pei Xiang was not aware of this matter for the time being. Even though Gao Jun was among the golden elixir back then and once traveled the world in the wind, he still failed to detect the truth. It was only because Cui Dongshan asked the right side of Sui to hand over a phoenix tree to Jiang Shangzhen. The latter in Tonggishao accommodated more than 1 million refugees, while the Earth Immortals and their families, French, disciples and grandchildren. Together there are as many as 6,000 people. At that time, Jiang Shangzhen was in two secluded areas in the Blessed Land, and asked Yu Guizong and Yunga Jiang to enshrine two proficient arrays. They circled two distant sites, set up landscape restrictions, and resettled so many refugees. Let them they live and thrive in 1,000 miles away, but they are isolated from the world. Inside the Blessed Land, only Wei Liang, the supreme emperor of Nanyuan Kingdom, knew about this. Because when they escorted these Tonggishao people into the Blessed Land for refuge, in addition to a large number of Yunlin Jiang's children, the right side of Sui, Yair and Jinshou Chao Jun, and Wei Xian, the founding emperor of Nanyuan Kingdom, led by himself. 10,000 fine riders are responsible for clearing the way. Although the Lotus Root Blessed Land has been closely linked with Luopao Mountain, if you take away the Tong Leaf umbrella, it will hurt your muscles and bones and lose a lot of money, but Chen Pingon still intends to let him in the next meeting of the Patriarch Hall. Cui Dongshan and Xiao Mo took the Tongya umbrella to Tonggishao. As long as they are willing to go back to their hometown, they can leave the Blessed Land and return to the mountains and rivers of Tonggisha's homeland. Of course, those who are willing to stay are better, Luopao Mountain. Soon the ban on landscapes will be lifted, the door will be opened, and the people who choose to stay will be integrated into the four kingdoms of Blessed Land. However, if one of the Tong Yizhou Qi trainers counts as one, they will have to owe a debt to Qingping Sword Sect, so it can be roughly closed. A Fox country must need a monk like Luo Fumei. What about the future Luopa Mountain? What about Qingping Sword Sect, who has already set up the sect framework? Chen Pingon smiled, his figure disappeared in a flash, and after a distraction, he returned to the cage. Xia Tao who recognized Zhu Lian who recognized Xia Tao. One person and one ghost, in the dilapidated old site of By Under the Clouds, from the dark night to the sky, the white of the fish's belly appeared. The rickety old man in cloth shoes added dead wood several times, and the mountain goddess who guarded this family business chatted. Her brows were soaring and she was not tired. At most, she glanced at Julien from time to time, feeling weird. The majestic mountain goddess, like a lively girl, completely opened up the conversation box, and talked about the last 100 years of rivers and lakes with this heartbreaker who would definitely kill the killer when she met her heart again. Even if the other party made it clear that he came here first, it had nothing to do with her. Xia Tao still didn't mind at all, the word first was enough. Xia Tao said that his family's library, that was 100 buildings, had been destroyed in the military disaster, and the study called Autumn no longer existed. Hearing this, Julien was indifferent, as if he was listening to a story from another family. But in Yu Garden, although the famous flowers were burnt clean by a fire, the rockery made of countless famous stones and ancient inkstones has been scattered everywhere. But in recent years, it seems that there are several identities unknown and generous behind-the-scenes collectors are buying and collecting these stones and inkstones with huge sums of money. Hearing this, Julien finally opened his mouth and said a few words with a smile. What to do with this thing is to waste manpower and money, even if someone pieced together a rockery in its original shape. What do you want to do? Pick up some women's embroidered shoes? Do you really think that stuff smells so good? There are baskets and baskets, and the smell is really not very good. In the past, flower farmers had to hold their noses and carry the burden. If they could not sell some money, they would all be regarded as a chore. Anyway, I always stay far away. There is also the Coral Palace on land where Julien used to store the famous swords in the world. Because the address is hidden like Yinshabai, he was lucky to escape, but when Xia Tao hurried there, he found that he had already been boarded first. And Xia Tao, who is proficient in building a piece, can see that it was evacuated, which is the same as her idea. It is not the kind of random smashing, but it is torn down bit by bit, marked and then tried to keep it intact. Do not put it back together. Julien just smiled and commented on this, never thinking that he was still an elegant thief. Xia Tao asked curiously, "Where have you been all these years?" Julien said slowly, inexplicably, "A life and death battle is coming. It's like..." Xia Tao waits for the next paragraph. Julien smiled and said, "It's like waking up early in the morning and having a good dream." Xia Tao had a sad face, bit his lip and asked, "Next, where are you going and what are you doing?" In fact, what she really wants to ask is who you will meet again, and will you come back here? Some dead branches occasionally made some movement in the fire. Julien thought for a while, looked up at the sky, and said, Go to the kitchen over there in the temple, make you breakfast, and see if my craft has improved." Xia Tao was both happy and angry, bit his lip, and muttered, "You have done other jobs under this cloud before, you just compiled a recipe, and you have never cooked." Thinking back to that time, the old noble's son, holding his cheek with one hand, sat lazily at the desk, while writing the preface of the recipe. The tip of the pen rustled on the peach blossom paper he made by himself, while turning his head and scrolling over the door. The woman behind the bamboo curtain smiled and said that governing a big country is like cooking a small fish. The golden sun shines through the window, dashing on the man's face. Julien smiled and said, "That's what I remembered wrong." Xia Tao turned his head away from him. Julien asked with a smile for no reason, like a riddle, "Guest officer, I've been on the tip for a long time, when will I leave the store and settle the bill?" Xia Tao was puzzled, turned his head and stared at Julien blankly. "Stupid girl is stupid girl, blame me for giving you the nickname Crybaby back then." Julien shook his head with a smile, with his hands behind his back, his body was hunched, and he took the lead to move towards the mountain shrine. Xia Tao followed silently, walking, her eyes lit up suddenly. She stopped, staring at the back. She quickened her pace, followed the old man, and reached out to take his arm. Zhu Lian gently pulled his arm, complaining that a man and a woman are not kissing each other. Xia Tao snorted and refused to let go. It turns out that the answer to the mystery is 2 words, miss. Horizontally and vertically, the guest officials live in the store, and when I come to my heart, I miss them. Sword of Coming Chapter 1198. Chapter 1198 Ask the Boxing and Ask the Sword. Lu Su walked out of the lotus root blessed land. The ripples were slightly rippling, and he came to a courtyard. The umbrella was blooming like a flower, hanging in the air, slowly rotating. Lu Su appeared in the shade. There was a little girl in black standing upright at the door, her head slowly turning, twisting to the far left and then moving her gaze to the right, in a loop, euphemistically called a patrol. There was a white-haired boy on the side, who was responsible for recording the exact time when outsiders entered and exited the blessed land. It was only when Lu Su arrived at Luopao Mountain that he knew that the place was called Jiling Peak, but Jisa Peak, where Luopao Mountain Zhu Shitang was located, was a secondary peak, not Zushan. Because the owner of the mountain, Zhu Lian, the chief butler, and the patriarch of the law are not on the mountain now, so the key to open the door of the blessed land was handed over to Nuanshu for safekeeping. In fact, apart from a layer of blindness, there is no landscape restriction on the house. It was recorded at the mountain gate first. The contemporary owner of Luomahi said that he wanted to talk to Shanju Qin. He heard that Qin Pingan had gone to the blessed land, and Lu Su had planned to wait. Su said it wasn't in a hurry, you could wait. The girl in the pink skirt asked Lu Jianxian to wait for a while, then ran to find Wei Wenlong, the largest official accountant in the spring mansion in the mountains at that time. After Wei Wenlong nodded, Nuanshu opened the parasol umbrella, and only then did Lu Zus trip to the autumn lake. Before he left, he took out a bag of Guyu money and said that he was walking according to the rules. When the monks entered and exited the blessed land, there would be a leak of spiritual energy, and they might even be attached to the luck and bring them out of the blessed land, just like the clouds and dew on the mountaineering clothes. So the money is considered a mess. Nuanshu just shook his head and said no, Lu Jianxian is a good friend of his own mountain master, so don't worry about this. If the mountain master knows about this later, he will definitely blame himself for his poor hospitality. At that time, the white-haired boy just grinned, the hidden official. No one can blame the warm tree head. However, Lu Su insisted on paying, otherwise he would wait outside for Qin Pingan to return to the mountains, and Nuanshu couldn't resist the serious-looking mule horse River Liu's sword immortal, so he had to temporarily accept the bag of immortal money, which was very heavy. It's definitely not snow money or Shaoshu money. Lu Su returned to Jiling Peak, and soon left. He declined the little girl in black to the guest down the mountain. He returned to Nujiadu alone, and boarded the ferry from Changchun Palace to continue his journey south. But before parting, Lu Su invited the compatriots Millet Grains to visit Liu's family in Luomahi when they were free. It is admiration and honor. This made the millet very happy, and stuffed the dried small fish in the cotton bag into Lu Jianxian, saying that he would bring it on the road as a drink, but Lu Su was not polite, saying that he used to be in the wine shop, and the second shopkeeper often said that he would take the food from my mountain. Dried fish served with wine, a unique taste. When Nuanshu handed the money bag to Wei's accountant, Wei Wenlong opened it, only to find out that except for the Guyu money on the top, the bottom was actually all valuable gold and copper coins. After careful counting, there are 36 gold and fine copper coins in simple shapes, which are not quite the same as the Spring Festival coins, support coins, and victory coins in the town. The white-haired boy was amazed, and repeatedly praised the Lu Ma He Lu family is really rich, Lu Jianxian is really kind, and the hidden official ancestors' ability to make friends, nothing to say. It seems to be a complete set of Big Dipper Tsongxing 36 Heavenly Gang gold fine copper coins. One side is inscribed with the name of the star and an auspicious word, the bottom is engraved with the outline of the city, and the other side is engraved with a celestial star map and a radiant general who sits in the seat. Read the book as mixed as way one long. I don't know the origin and casting reasons of these gold and copper coins. It is estimated that you can ask Chui Dongshan, who is currently entertaining guests in other mansions, but it is obvious that these ancient gold and copper coins with excellent appearance can be called beautiful. Far above the ordinary gold and copper coins. Earlier, at the entrance of the mountain, Lu Su saw a middle-aged man in blue shirt, who was elusive. He clasped his fists with Lu Su and smiled. The chief of Luopa Mountain worships Zhou Fei, and has seen the Lu family master. Originally, as soon as I heard that someone from Luoma River in Beiju Luzhou was coming to Luopao Mountain, Jiang Shangzhen began to hide in Dafeng Brothers' house at the foot of the mountain and disappeared. When he opened a certain account book, he did a careful calculation. He has never provoked any woman from the Lu family in the Mule Horse River. The Lu family just has a good relationship with the nearby Sanlang Temple Yuan family. Therefore, we stayed here and waited for Lu Su to show up. Lu Su stopped and clasped his fists to return the salute. The mule on the river. Lu Su, I have seen the old sect master Jiang. If it weren't for Jiang Shangzhen's battle in Tonggishao, worthy of the word, sword immortal, the impression of this person on Luzhou Mountain in Beiju changed a lot. Lu Su would not be willing to stop and say hello, otherwise according to the local saying in his hometown, if you have money, you will have money. If your realm is higher than yours, I just don't stick to you. What's more, Lu Su no longer thinks people's words are scary. After all, more things are worse than less things. He really doesn't want to touch the yellow mud on his crotch. After all, if Beiju Luzhou knew that he and Jiang Shangzhen had been drinking at the same table, the Lu Ma He Lu clan's fame is over. So when Jiang Shangzhen said that he would send Lu Su a ride to Nujiadu, Lu Su categorically rejected the other party's good intentions. It's just that now Beiju Luzhou, whenever I mention young hidden officials, I have a little regret. There is always a feeling of white jade and slight flaws. How can Jiang Thief be worshipped by name? However, he quickly helped the young hidden officials to find excuses. I must have been really short of money in Luopao Mountain, so the rich and powerful Jiang Thief took advantage of the opportunity to eat vegetarian meals in Luopao Mountain. It can be seen that Qin Shanju started a school in his hometown. At the beginning, it was not easy. It must be the poor who can't open the pot, but Jiang Thief is too thick-skinned. Even if he makes money with the principal, he can get out of the way. What's the great reputation for? Nowadays, as long as there are visitors who come to Luopao Mountain, they can take a seat at the entrance of the mountain to drink tea, or go up the mountain to drink, and Luopao Mountain will present a sword talisman cast by the Dragon Elephant Sword sect in the past. Lu Su said in a heartfelt voice, I would like to trouble the old sect master Jiang and Qin Shanju to share a message. That bag of immortal money is my personal gift from Lu Su. After that, the business between Lu Peishan and the Lu family is another matter. The bag of gold and copper coins was sent to Lu Su by the Lu Ma He Lu clan, who received an inquiry from Lu Su Feijian, and quickly Feijian replied with a letter. Jiang Shangzhen nodded, it's a small matter, I'll be happy to help. Jing Dafeng sat on a bamboo chair beside Daoist Xianwei, closed the book, and said with a smile, it looks like an old man with a story. Jiang Shangzhen nodded and said, the Mule Ma He Lu clan is enough to write more than a dozen legendary novels of Jianghu. Jing Dafeng said in surprise, this guy is actually the contemporary head of the Luoma Heliu clan in Beiju Luzhou. As soon as he patted his head, Jing Dafeng tooted his tongue in admiration and said, when I think of it, it's really unbelievable. I never wanted to write such a sword repair with no trouble. Great genius, you are dressed like this when you go out. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, that's why I fell in love with the mountain master. At that time, at the wine table in the capital of Dali, Chen Pingon put 3 gold and copper coins on the table. Lu Su, do you have this kind of gold and copper coins? Will the Lu Ma Helu clan sell it? I don't have any, but as long as the Mule Ma Helu family has stock, they will definitely sell it. It's not difficult. If someone else asks this kind of question, the Lu Ma Helu family will not entertain guests. If you leave, you will punish yourself for a bowl. Business is business, sword repair and sword repair. In the private house of Big White Goose, Cui Dongshan is holding the elder sister Pei Qian and is welcoming the guest Fu Lu Yuxuan. Jun Qian and Bai are also like assistants. This made the old man flattered, and he made a lot of money on this trip to Beipingzu Luopao Mountain. In the history of Haoran, there are very few immortal houses that can have both the authentic ancestral court and the upper and lower sects at the same time. Yuxian's Taofu Mountain happens to be one of them. The old man came to look for Pei Qian in name. When he was in Jinjiazu, he saw that Pei Qian was cleaning the battlefield. The old man had a good impression of the little girl. In addition, there are 2 other reasons. I came to Luopao Mountain to meet the boy in the tiger-headed hat, who was also a guest. The years are long, and Yuxian and this person are the most proud of them. They have never had a serious chat. Phil. Then there is the old man who wants to see the self-proclaimed little dragon king of Luopa Mountain, Daoist Jingqing. Before in the outer Xinghe, the old show had roughly talked about the great achievements of the children in Xingyi, which made Yuxian very interested. How bold only then did he dare to address Xing Juzhong as his nephew. Chen Lingjun was originally reluctant to follow the Big White Goose to greet Fu Lu Yuxuan. After all, this old man with a high reputation in the Middle-earth Shenzhou was on the first few pages of the passers-by. As a result, the old man called and asked Daoist Jingqing to have a few drinks together, which made the boy in Xingyi be dumbfounded on the spot. Absolutely don't look at the old man, and if you can say one thing clearly in 2 words, you will never say 3 words. This made the old man unavoidably murmured in his heart. Could it be that the old man's reputation in Luopa Mountain was not good? No, I remember that when Pei Qian left the battlefield, he once said a few sincere words, saying that his master once said to her, Fu Lu Yu Wushuang, killing immortal spirits, this evaluation is not low, right? So much so that over the years, the 3 sects Shanshui Mansion newspapers have begun to frequently borrow and copy this statement. It is said that the outside world has also recognized it very much. Yuxian asked curiously, Sect Master Cui, that sword boat? Cui Dongshan hiccuped and said with a smile, it's a gift reserved by some old for my husband. I was cut off by my student. I'm just worried about how to explain to my husband so that I don't get slapped. It is indeed the sect congratulations that Xiuhu gave to his younger brother Chen Pingon, and he secretly pulled this Bing-Ding sword boat from the military sequence of Dali. It's a student's. Shangzong Luopao Mountain, after all, is not a kendo sect, so it was dug up by sect master Cui like this. The effect of Jianzhou is completely different from the imitation Baiyujing that accompanies the capital above Dadu. The latter is designed to kill great monks, while the former is the nightmare of the wild army tent monsters on the battlefield in the past, as long as Jianzhou has determined the battlefield in advance. Position, latitude and longitude coordinates, hovering over a huge sword boat outside the battlefield, just 1 round of air salvo, can be targeted for thousands of miles away, clear a place with extremely precise fixed point, dense flying swords like rainstorm landing on the earth. A large area of the battlefield within a radius of dozens of miles was swept away. When 30 Dali sword boats hovered outside the battlefield at the same time, the rain was majestic, and hundreds of thousands of flying swords were shot, covering almost 1,000 miles. Cui Dongshan asked, "Old immortal Yu is a guest at our house this time. Did he make usury loans first, and then come to the door to collect debts?" Yu Xian looked embarrassed and waved his hand. "Nothing." Pei Qian's face is full of doubts. "What kind of usury?" The old man is putting this on his master's head. Chen Lingjun, who has been sitting upright and dumb all the time, admires his foresight. "Look, these seniors in front of passers-by, are they fierce or not? This is the first time I have come to ask for money in person." Thankfully, he didn't get carried away and cocked his tail because he was lucky enough to climb the old fairy Jing Hao Jing, who was the Taibao of Lixiaoziqing Palace. When I turned around, I added a few words to the booklet, circled all the 5 Zhongtu sects including Taofu Mountain, and commented on a detour. Cui Dongshan furtively looked at the boy in the tiger-headed hat. Bai Yi said indifferently, "It is only right and proper to pay back the debt." Obviously, he doesn't want to be faked by Cui Dongshan. Since Shanzhu Chen dared to follow Yu Xian and to Fushan to borrow usury loans, of course he had to repay the money. Jun Qian nodded and said, "Even if it's money plucked out from under your fingernails, it's still money, and Bai Yi's fair words are still reasonable." Yu Xian looked more and more embarrassed. "Dare you two, one sings a red face and the other sings a white face." Previously in Tianwai, Xing Juzhong, who claimed to be, just had 300 gold and copper coins on hand, lent it to Chen Pingan to temporarily crawl and improve the rank of Zhongyue in Fijianjing, his life, but he could use a 1-to-10 conversion method. Convert it into 3,000 grain rain money to repay the debt, 3% of interest each year. It was just that Chen Pingan needed 500 gold and copper coins, so Yu Xian took out 300 coins. Share interest. Therefore, Cui Dongshan said that this was a loan shark, and he did not wrong the old man. It's just according to Chen Pingan's assumption that there are 300 gold and copper coins in stock in the spring house in the mountains, so we should ask for a debt-free one, and we must quickly repay this human debt. But I really don't worry about Feijian sending a letter after all. Some Yi Xiao on the mountain who is not afraid of breaking the taboo likes to intercept Feijian. Chen Pingan planned to let Xia go carry this huge sum of money and let her go to Taofu Mountain in China to fill the Golden Peak. As for the 3,000 pieces of Guyu money that he owes to Beidasheng, it's not a matter of urgency. He only said that Han Chaosi took the initiative to buy books with Chen Pingan. I believe this hole can be filled soon. According to Xing Zhezhong's estimate at the time, if Chen Pingan's birthright Feijian wanted to take another big step and raise the rank of Fijianjing Zhongyue, he would need roughly 1,500 gold and copper coins. If Xing Zhezhong's conversion method is used, that is 15,000 grain rain money, and Chen Pingan can improve the rank of a flying sword of life. It can be seen that the consumption of sword cultivation and swords is indeed a matter of gold and silver. No wonder it is said that there are no rich swordsmen in the world. Either they owe money, or they are walking on the road of owed money. Lu Ji, who ate a few pieces of Bai Yujing's sword-washing talisman at once, was like this, and he once thought of becoming the criminal officer House Su of the Lord of the Green City. Old Jinren is the originator of Taofu Mountain in the Middle Earth, and the dojo is located on the filled gold peak. The world-renowned 5 sects in one mountain, 1 ancestral court, 1 upper sect and 3 lower sects, this scale, not to mention in the vast world, is unique in several worlds. Taofu Mountain also has a first-class blessed land and a Yunmeng Xiadongshan, as well as 2 middle-level blessed places with rich wealth in Laoqing and Bailian. Except for the latitude and longitude view of the abbot Zhao Wenmin, a disciple of Yuxian Zaijuan, Songshu a Daoist, which is a little poorer, the other 4 sects have immortal palaces, all of them are rich and deep. Therefore, Jun Qian said that the money was the small money that Yu Xian pulled out of his fingernails, and it was true that he never wronged the old man who has never been worried about money for a lifetime of cultivation and success. Damn, these disciples of Wensheng's lineage, their speech is carved out of the same mold. Yu Xian was out of the sky at that time, and its predecessor's demeanor was slightly insufficient, just because the old real person really needed a large amount of gold and copper coins at that time, the more the better. It is due to the fact that in the past few hundred years, there have been two great talismans that have been carefully developed but never appeared in the world, both of which involve the long river of time. The reason why Yu Xian was able to monopolize the word Fu Lu in Haoran was not only that he could draw many indescribable Yunzhuan Dan Shu, but also that he adhered to a very simple and root for character knowledge. Win by quantity. It was only later that Lao Xiuzai took a trip to Xinghe. Not only did he take the initiative to give Yu Xian a bag of 10 caddies of Suishan soil, but the old Xiuzai also seemed to be a rebellious guest, sitting in Xinghe to help stabilize the realm for Yu Xian as the host. Therefore, when I came to Luopa Mountain this time, Yu Xian just wanted to say hello to Qin Pingan in person. The 300 gold and copper coins that I owed before, I don't need to pay it back to Luopa Mountain, and I will speak a few words honestly. If you think about it, it is also that Yu Xian owes Wensheng a favor, and Lao Xiu is your husband. If he doesn't accept it, it will be considered on the top of the mountain. Yu Xian has already thought about it, except for the previous 300 gold and copper coins. There is no need to return it. Taofu Mountain filling Gold Peak is also willing to lend 1,000 gold and copper coins to Luopa Mountain. As for the 500 temporarily borrowed, it does not count as interest. Oh, didn't Yujing Juzhong start a conversation in the outer world at that time? Now it's your Beidacheng's turn. Filling Jin Feng has already taken out 1,000 gold and copper coins, and the remaining 500, won't Mr. Jing follow? Most sects don't know the inside story, but Yu Xian knows it well. At least 1,000 years ago, Beidasheng began to secretly collect gold and copper coins. Named and anonymous worshippers and guest ministers in Beidasheng, from the upper 5 realms to the immortals of the earth, need to consecrate varying amounts of gold and copper coins to Beidasheng every year. Coupled with the fact that Haoran Kyushu took the initiative to contact Beidacheng's Shanzi Yeshio, the status of this group of monks is not bad. If they want to buy or borrow some isolated secret books with Beidasheng, it seems that they need to use gold and copper coins to pay for it. In exchange, for 1,000 years, the golden body fragments of the gods and gods of the mountains and rivers from all over the 9 continents, and the gold and copper coins that were cast into coins, one by one, flowed into Baidi's city continuously. In terms of the amount of gold and copper coins saved, Beidasheng might be able to compete with Lu clan in AI continent. If you add Jing Zhezhong's own share, especially his hidden income in the wild world, compared to Lu clan, estimated only a lot more. It was really my fault that I didn't read it carefully, or that the old cook put Gong Hua on the booklet of Peixiang, instead of scenery and spirituality. After entering the Damu Temple, on the Baiyu Square outside the Zushi Hall, the Taoist temple has removed the incense burner, freeing up a large clear and refreshing space, and there are 2 rows of Wangwali official hat chairs with simple shapes, which seems to be a typical Songlai country. If you go back to the source of the work in Beijing, it is probably the carpentry craftsmanship of Zhu Lian in the previous dynasty. It can be seen that each chair is very careful, the shape is the same, but the back of the chair has different carving patterns, or curly grass, cloud pattern or Ganoderma lucidum, flowers and birds. The lines are smooth and very lively. At first glance, it is from the hands of famous masters, slightly. Jia, pay attention to its lines, it seems to have sword meaning, maybe it is Gong Hua's handwriting. However, there are 2 special chairs in the square, which are isolated, one south and one north, facing each other. It can be seen that one was arranged for Qin Shanju, and the other belonged to Gao Jun, the contemporary head of the Hushan school, who was the initiator of this discussion. I just don't know where Zhong Qian is sitting. Because it was too early to discuss the matter, only a few people were seated for the time being. Looking at the man in green shirt standing next to Gong Hua at the gate of the Taoist temple, they were all confused. Chen Pingan laughed at himself. Palace Master Wu said it well, if you don't cultivate morality, all the people in the boat will be enemies. Gong Hua pretended not to understand this sentence, pointed to the south chair with its back against the main hall of the Taoist temple, and smiled. There is still some time before the discussion. Chen Jianxian can take a seat here, or he can go to Luoyuan first. Of course, I am more than happy to accompany Chen Jianxian to visit Demugwen for tea. It is a great honor. However, Chen Pingan walked to the chair facing the main hall, stretched out his hand to hold the handle of the chair, and said with a smile, I'm a guest, just sit here. This move was obviously beyond Gong Hua's expectations, and she didn't know how to answer for a while. Last night, there were 7 people who were qualified to sit down and drink tea at Luohua Courtyard, including the main palace flower of the Demugwen Temple. Afterwards, there was actually a second discussion. Only 4 more people were added. All of them were distinguished guests who stayed directly in Demugwen. They were the monarchs of the 4 kingdoms in the world today, Tang Tie, who usurped the throne of the northern Jin kingdom, and Nan, who had inherited the great lineage by a chanting. The emperor of the Yuan kingdom, Wei Yan, the young monarch of the Songlai kingdom, Huang Mian, who had just succeeded the throne a few years ago, and the contemporary lord of the Tuoba clan, the lord of the northern grasslands, Tuoba Days. What is most interesting to Luopa Mountain and Chen Pingan are 3 things. What is the background of Luopa Mountain? What is the realm of Chen Pingan? And what is his temperament? In fact, when Wei Yan was still a prince, he had dealt with Chen Pingan for a long time, but during the discussion, the emperor of the Nanyuan kingdom just kept his mouth shut and never mentioned the matter of drinking at the same table with the young Jianxian. Because Wei Yan does not have the aptitude for cultivating Xianjia magic, he has occasionally seen Wei Liang, the emperor who seems to be getting younger and younger over the years, and Wei Yan will feel extremely complicated. June, seeing his unfathomable father, Wei Yan became more and more fearful. Unidentified people who saw the father and son might mistake them for brothers. Zhong Qian stepped on the surface of the lake, touched the water, and rushed all the way to Demugwen, where the island in the center of the lake is located. Wei Liang had already picked up the unconscious girl in the dragon robe, and it seemed that he really followed the law and left Chuchi Lake, so he withdrew from participating in the discussion. Chen Pingan remembered the incident and said, Wei Liang and the others have vacated the 2 positions, please go to the Palace Guanju to discuss with Sect Master Gao temporarily, and replace the 2 to fill the vacancies. Gong Hua nodded, this is the best. Although it is not clear what happened on the shore of the lake just now, which caused Chen Pingan and Wei Liang to have a baffling conflict, Gong Hua doesn't think this is a bad thing. The relationship is not normal. Because of this relationship, last night, the second meeting of the 4 monarchs in Luoyuan was held. Wei Yan was mute from beginning to end. Let's talk less. They have completely distanced themselves from Nanyuan Kingdom, and Wei Yan is indeed calm enough. After nearly an hour of discussion, the face of His Majesty the Emperor of Nanyuan Kingdom could not be seen in the slightest. Strange. Otherwise, Chen Pingan is here today, and there are actually quite a few allies on paper, the Emperor Wei Yan, the Emperor Wei Liang, the girl in the dragon robe with the Taoist name Jijiao, Zhou Shuzhen, the old owner of the building, Pei Xiang, the master of the Fox Kingdom, Zhong Qian. That's 6. If you add a martial arts master in Nanyuan country, a Jiangshuwei Jingxin, and 2 chi practitioners who established a sect and established a dojo there, you must know that the total number of people in today's meeting is only 32. Gong Hua didn't hesitate, made a bow and retire, and went to Luoyuan to discuss the matter with Gao Jun. It doesn't matter, as long as your old cook cooks a good dish, I will show it to you. One after another, members of the council came here. One of them was an old woman who looked like an old woman at the border of the northern Jin kingdom. She was old-fashioned and habitually faltered. When she saw Zhong Qian and the blue-shirt swordsman, the old woman had a restrained expression and a flattering smile, and took the initiative to say hello to Zhong Qian. Qian frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. She just focused on explaining some of the old woman's landscape rumors with her own Qin Shanju. Don't look at the appearance of a kind-hearted old woman, but in fact she was on the top of her own mountain, very majestic. On the face of it, the ritual system of the mountain god mansion is arrogant everywhere, only that the height of her golden-painted deity statue is the highest in the world today, even more majestic than the Wuyue mountain monarchs of all countries and a few Jiang Fujian gods. A gold mine that has never been discovered, so it is a veritable golden body, which has cost countless gold. It is said that in the early years, the city god of a nearby state brought a large group of city god officials, including Yi Yushin, to her mountain mansion to ask for guilt. It is obvious that there will be no return. If it wasn't for the poor reputation of the old woman on the mountain, the internal criticism of the northern Jin dynasty was not small, and Tang Tie would have named her as one of the 5 mountain kings in his country. The old woman walked outside the Taoist temple. After exiting the gate, she went to Yuzhang Island and Luodai Island. She called an orthodox mountain of Songlai Kingdom and a familiar ghost trainer. The latter said, the potter, who had previously participated in the bamboo banquet and wine party of the dragon-robed girl Zhijiao together with the old woman. And the mountain of the Songlai Kingdom was Gao Jun's return to the Hushan faction this time. He suggested to the young emperor to choose a mountain top for each of the 5 mountain monarchs of a country, and he became the first prince in the history of the Blessed Land. The mountain god, things happened in a hurry, and inexplicably raised the first-order position in the landscape officialdom, and this time the Chuchi Lake discussion, because the small 5 sacred mountain kings of various countries were excluded, no mountain king came to Chuchi Lake. Self-indulgent, but let him pick up a big leak and be able to attend the discussion. However, in addition to the 2 vacancy members called by the old woman, who came to Demugwen together, there was also a female cultivator Chen Pingan who had only seen in The Beauty of the World, Sun Wanyan, the Taoist name Ling Fu. She was wearing a single. She wore a long satin dress and a long armor on her little finger. Probably saw that the old women went to the 2 islands to call people, and several, a pure warrior, Jianghu seniors from the Hosta Island also came to Demugwen together. Transfer to the Hushan school to serve as the armed Saint Qing Yuanshan, the secret worshipper. He admires Zhou Shuzhen, the Empress Dowager of Nanyuan State, who is the owner of the upper floor. Wu Kei, the master of swordsmanship. There are also 2 famous rivers and lakes in recent years, who are of the same generation as Qing Yuanshan and Wu Kei, and now they are all 6-level warriors. One of them was an old man named Chao Ni, who was in high spirits and had long-breathing swordsmen. Chao Ni is also one of the 4 great masters of Jianghu, who was rated by Admiration Liu. He is a late bloomer, and he was still unknown in Jianghu 20 years ago, but he is now the #1 swordsman in the world. The distance from the sword is more than 10 feet long, and with a green blade of 3 feet alone, it is enough to slay ghosts and evil spirits like a qi cultivator. When Qing Yuanshan saw the blue-shirt swordsman with the jade hairpin on his head, his face changed slightly, but he didn't speak. I have seen him twice, once in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom in the early years, and once in the Hushan school not long ago. Zhou Shuzhen and Chen Pingan cast 1,000,000 blessings, smiling like flowers. I have seen Chen Jianxian. Chen Pingan clasped his fists in return. I have seen the landlord Zhou. Zhou Shu really covered his mouth and smiled and said, it's all old Huangli, and now I'm just the janitor of that library. They are no better than Earth Immortal Gao Jun and the host Gong Hua, but they are only in the middle 5 realms, so it is still unclear about the incident on the shore. Chen Pingan smiled and nodded. It's a good thing to be able to concentrate on cultivating the Tao without an official. Zhou Shu really smiled as usual, but she sighed faintly in her heart. If it wasn't for her identity and faction, she really didn't want to go to the opposite side of this Qinjianxian. Wu Kei, whose beard and hair are all white, has a magic sword with a heavy treasure of the fairy family hanging from his waist. Although he is a genuine and pure martial artist, it does not prevent the old man from buying a handy weapon with a lot of money. The burly Wu Kei stretched out his hand to hold down the hilt of the knife, and squinted at the Qin Jianxian, who had made a name for himself in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom in the past. After many years, he finally saw the real person. The old woman named Zhang Ji, like a Taoist priest in Demugwen, was very attentive. She took the initiative to help the worldly experts and the mountains and rivers to take their seats. If you don't know the bottom of the old woman, maybe Suzhen treats her as an old village woman who has never seen the world and has shallow eye sockets. Wei Yan of Nanyuan State was the first emperor to show his face. When he arrived at the square, he did not speak to Zhou Shu, because the queen mother of Nanyuan State had passed away due to illness. Knowing that Zhou Shuzhen admired the identity of the owner of the building at that time, he was already on his hands. Wei Yan didn't catch up with Qin Pingan either, but just sat down silently, showing a single shape. Later, Tang Tie, the emperor of the northern Jin dynasty, and Tuoba Days appeared together. In fact, the border between the two countries was bordered. Originally, the two sides fought hard, but when the weather changed, there were more gods and ghosts in the world. Holding on to the army, began to deal with internal affairs, conferred the 5 mountains of Chan, the righteousness of the mountains and rivers, competed for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and vigorously cultivated, attracted and supported chi refiners. The refiner that Tang Tie was wearing on his waist was in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom, and Tang Tie used this knife to go to the next city first. Feng Qingbai, a ranger who was exiled from immortals, died at the hands of Tang Tie, who was the 10th person in the world back then. He was attacked by the latter, splitting his body with a knife and splitting his body on the spot. But Ding Ying, who was the number 1 person in the world, finally died at the hands of an exiled immortal. Tang Tie once received a punch from Qin Pingan. But now that we meet again, Tang Tie ignored his past suspicions, smiled, clasped his fists in the distance, and said loudly, Qin Jiangxian's demeanor is still better than before. Qin Pingan was still standing behind the chair lying on his stomach, but just smiled and nodded. Qing Yuanshan sat in his seat and couldn't help but glanced at Tang Tai's saber, his eyelids trembled slightly. In the hands of Qing Yuanshan, but because this knife is too mysterious and famous for its viciousness, Qing Yuanshan was cautious in his life and did not dare to mess with it. Tang Tie, who was in his hands, never thought that not only did Tang Tie not die as violently as those predecessors, but instead, he got this weapon, and his killing power rose with the tide. Later, this Dharma saber became a treasure of Xianjia, juxtaposed with the silver lotus crown on Ding Ying's head, the cyan dress in the capital of Nanyuan, and the golden body of Arhat in Baihe Temple. At that time, except for Eugenie, who climbed the mountain and cultivated immortals alone, there were no chi refiners or ghosts and ghosts. When the visions of heaven and earth appeared one after another, Qing Yuanshan was so remorseful that he wanted to slap himself a few times. At the beginning, the warriors who successfully climbed to the top of the city, in addition to flying up and leaving, were handed a magic weapon or a chance. For example, Eugenie got a golden jade genealogy ultimatum, Chongqiu got the true shape map of the 5 mountains, and Monk Yunni got a white jade lotus root. However, when Chongqiu was still serving as the national teacher of Nanyuan, the spy of Nanyuan never spied on anything about what Tang Tie had obtained. An old man with a whisk in his hand and full of Taoism walked into the square with light steps. Then came a child with straw sandals with a hairpin on his head and sackcloth, followed by a handsome young man, who took their seats. With their arrival, the square where there were still some whispers was silent for a while, and the needles could be heard. There were also 2 mountain monarchs who used their magical powers to shrink the earth's veins, appeared directly in their respective seats, and took their seats slowly. The world's great 5 mountain lords, Zhongyue Jing Fengzhou, Dongyue Zhao Yuran, Beiyue Jade Master, Xia Song Huaibao, and Nanyue Huaifu are all present. Gao Jun also appeared, and beside her was the Guanhua, the young emperor of Songlai Kingdom, Huang Mian. As a result, the monarchs of the 4 kingdoms also took their seats. Pei Xiang, the lord of the Fox country, was the last to arrive, so her seat was easy to find. In addition to Chen Pingan, the only outsider, a total of 33 people participated in today's Chuchi Lake discussion. Gao Jun stood on the farthest chair in the north, and with the blue-shirted man in the south, she made a bow. Hushan sent Gao Jun, "It is better to be respectful than to obey, and take the courage to sit here." Chen Pingan stood up, walked around the chair, picked up his long gown, sat down gently, and said with a smile, "It's easy to say. There are 2 rows of seats, the left-hand side is respected by the monarchs of the 4 kingdoms, and the right-hand side is respected by the Wayuashan monarch. Then on the 2 sides are Wufu Zhongqian, who admires Lu Zhou Shuzhen, Qing Yuanshan, Chao Ni, Wu Quebec. And Demuguang Gonghua, the master of the Fox Kingdom, Pei Xiang, and the Hushan school, a Longman-level chi practitioner with the Taoist name Lingfu and his appearance. Sun Wanyan, the alluring country and city, Zhangji, the mountain who is an old woman in the northern Jin dynasty, the potter, Song Jian, the of water. At this moment, at the gate of the Taoist temple, there was a young fairy boy standing there with a panicked expression, overwhelmed and hesitant to speak. Gong Hua frowned slightly, turned her head to look at Gao Jun. Gao Jun was also a little hesitant, Zhou Shuzhen's eyes were lowered, and she held her breath. Chen Pingan turned his head to look at the door of the Taoist temple. He heard his voice before anyone saw him, and someone said solemnly, "Jiang Quan, the fallen scholar of Nanyuan, wants to live and die with Qin Jianxian." The originally dignified square suddenly burst into an uproar. At the door, a slender figure with a mask on his face appeared, with a saber on his waist and a piano bag on his back. "Isn't this person Jiang Shenxi, a famous swordsman? How did you become a scholar of Nanyuan country?" Jiang Quan took off his mask and threw it on the ground. Everyone saw that he gently took off the piano bag behind him and placed it diagonally on the wall. Jiang Quan took out an old purse and 2 silver bills from his sleeve, and put them in. On top of the piano bag. Jiang Quan changed his title, "Mr. Qin, do you still remember me?" In front of him, the man in the blue shirt, who seemed to be practicing Taoism in the mountains without any trace of time delay, used to pretend to be the children of the Gu family who came to see him, and then sent an entanglement to Jiang Quan to prepare for the next spring in the capital. Chen Pingan stood up, nodded and said, "Of course I remember." Jiang Quan was silent for a moment. "Then you must still remember Gu Ling." Chen Pingan remained silent. Jiang Quan said indifferently, "An old hatred and personal hatred will not delay you for too long." Pei Xiang was at a loss. Where did the trouble come from? Could it be that the so-called villain Qin Shanju previously called was not a joke? Zhong Qian rubbed her chin and fell into contemplation, vaguely remembering the ambush in the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom that year. It seems that there was indeed a female violinist who was proficient in assassination first. In the past years in Lotus Flower Blessed Land, regarding Gu Ling, Chen Pingan thought about 3 options, and finally chose the third one. 3 years later, Chong Chiu would tell Jiang Quan the whole truth. But when Chong Chiu left the Blessed Land and came to Luopao Mountain, Chen Pingan only found out when he asked. It was obviously Lao Guan who took the initiative, because Chong Chiu had completely forgotten about it. Jiang Quan took a deep breath and stretched out his hand to hold the hilt of the knife. "Qin Jianxian, I understand the truth. The hatred in the rivers and lakes, the sword, the light and the sword, are nothing but conceit of life and death, that's all." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "That's the truth." Zhou Shuzhen said slowly, "After Jiang Quan's death, I admire Lu Zhou Shuzhen, and everyone present can testify, even if it is a life and death declaration, dare to ask Qin Shanju a question." Chao Ni's eyes shone brightly. "Warrior Chao Ni, I would like to ask Qin Jianxian with swords, selfless hatred without public anger, not willing to die, just want to learn what the so-called sword fairy is." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Don't worry, wait for Jiang Quan to draw his sword and draw it out of the sheath. After this competition, everyone present, as long as you are willing to get up, learn how to fight and ask for swords, you can join together." Sword of Coming Chapter 1199. Chapter 1199. He knew I would be mistaken by the fairy surrounded by heroes, all alone, still actively inviting everyone to join. Asking about swords is optional. As soon as Chen Pingan said this, the whole Demogwen felt a strong chilling atmosphere. The white-robed youth exiled from the past, now the middle-aged blue-shirt swordsman, with a smile on his face, a gentle tone, no harsh words on his face, a calm expression. It's like Mr. Shuashu taught a bunch of stubborn children, etc. Be more serious about your endorsement later, or you will stand up and face the board. Zhou Shuzhen's expression changed slightly. She just hoped to use the momentum of Jiang Quan's revenge to give Chen Pingan a good start, and of course the price they would pay would be very high. Jiang Quan, who came here to seek revenge, was sure to die. Zhou Shuzhen also has the will to die. As for whether she will die and lose her soul, it only depends on the severity of the opponent's shot, whether she will kill, and whether she is willing to let her die. Her fate, isn't it the fate of this world? People are swords, I am fish, the world is good or bad, good or bad, good or bad, all in the hands of others. But she didn't want a discussion in which she made a good start and helped Gao Jun and the others take the first mover advantage into a group fight like a fight in the market. Mountain pain kills, there is no room for maneuver. Once this situation turns into this, Chen Pingan and Luo Peshan will have a reason to kill, and she will be the culprit in this world full of blood. Such a situation is not what she wants. Chao Ni smiled and said, "I'm only used to discussing with people alone, and am not used to fighting with people together. If there's a noisy fight later, I won't get up." Chen Pingan stretched out a palm towards the Taoist temple entrance, smiled and said, "Jiang Quan, you don't want to delay the discussion for too long, even more so, I will go home early after chatting, and quickly pull out the scabbard." Under the eyes of the public, Jiang Shenxi, who is regarded as the top 3 swordsmen in the world, has the blue veins bursting out of the hand that draws the sword. There was a sound of hunting, and the dust on the ground spread out like ripples. The Grand Master's momentum is indeed not weak. It's just that someone soon saw the clue. How long did it take for you, Jiang Shenxi, to brew the pile frame and the killer sword? Is it timid and flinched? Or is it the ace-in-the-box bottom knife method, which is a ruthless way to tell the winner and loser and life and death as soon as you make a shot? So you want to find out Chen Jiangxian's flaws. After Chen Pingan and Jiang Quan finished talking, he turned to look at Chao Ni, and said pleasantly, "Since everyone got up, why are you so polite? What do you think, Chao Ni?" Chao Ni smiled and dismissed it, but when Chao Ni wanted to sit down again, he was horrified to find that he couldn't even bend his knees. A mouthful of pure infuriating qi in the body runs without any hindrance, and both hands can move freely, only the legs can't move. Taking advantage of this time when Chen Pingan was chatting with others, Huaifu turned his head to look at Gao Jun, who was sitting on the main seat, and asked with his eyes, "Is this Jiang Shenxi who is going to seek revenge with Chen Pingan, or the ghost Jiang Quan? It's not the foreshadowing of your Hushan faction's arrangement." Gao Jun shook his head. Jiang Quan appeared in Chuchi Lake this time. She didn't know it beforehand. She even heard the name Jiang Quan for the first time. But the name Gu Ling gave Gao Jun a bit of an impression. Back then, when the capital of Nanyuan Kingdom tried to set up an ambush to surround and kill the immortal, she seemed to want to grab the top prize and blocked Chen Pingan in the street. Tang Tie was quite surprised. The usurper with the sword on his knee subconsciously stretched out his hand and rubbed the scabbard. He turned his head to look at the old owner of the building who admired the martial artist. Zhou Shu really took the wrong medicine. Why is she like this? Jiang Quan openly provoked Qin Pingan because of his anger. But Nanyuangguo and Jinjianglu don't have long legs, so they are not afraid of affecting Jingguozuo and his family's business, and they will be settled by Luo Peishan after the fall. Tang Tie shifted his gaze slightly. Wei Liang and the girl from the lake with the Taoist name Jijiao were temporarily absent from the discussion, and the two adjacent chairs were replaced. Did Qin Pingan and Luo Peishan temporarily sense something was wrong, and they started first to be stronger. Last night, during the discussion in Luoyuan, the emperors and Douyu Shanjun roughly discussed a result and reached a consensus. As the upper realm Luo Pao Mountain, the owner of the blessed land, Qin Pingan must recognize the autonomy of this world, and is willing to sign a landscape oath contract with them, and the period is at least 300 years. Talk. According to the agenda agreed upon at Luoyuan last night, today the number one person in the world, Hushan, sent Gao Jun to take the lead in challenging Qin Pingan's Luo Pao Mountain to raise this matter. Qing Yuanshan was both shocked and admired by the words of Chao Enai next to him. He never thought that this unspeakable swordsman was so arrogant and arrogant. Look, Chao Enai has never been seated, just standing there. What a hero. Chao Enai has always been known for being aloof and withdrawn on the rivers and lakes. He does not set up a school to collect disciples, nor does he like to learn martial arts with others. He prefers to be alone, incognito, walking in the rivers and lakes, climbing mountains and rivers, unlike one of the four great masters. One of the masters is more like a Confucian who doesn't care about fame. In addition, Chao Enai's martial arts achievements belong to a late bloomer, so when Jinjiangla selects the master candidate, Chao Enai is on the list, and most people in the world are at a loss. The Yu Xian of the Hushan faction who practiced Taoism and rejuvenated his youth has already been lifted up and left the world, and Lu Tai, the demon sect with whom he has worked hard, has also disappeared. In this way, if you want to ask, to determine the level of Taoism and magic power of the immortals in the mountains, unless you are looking for Gao Jun of the Hushan school to compete. Since Chao Enai considered himself a swordsman again, and wanted to know what a land sword immortal was, there happened to be such a discussion, and it was indeed more reasonable to find this Qin Jianxian, who used to be a swordsman against Ding Ying. Qing Yuanshan even suspected that if Qin Pingan didn't show up, in a few years, Chao Enai would go to the Hushan school. The century-old rivers and lakes roughly belong to three warriors of different generations. According to legend, the 100-year-old admires Lu Zhou Chao Enai, who is younger than Chong Qiu and is similar in age to Tang Tie, and the rising star Jiang Shenzi, are not against Qin Jianxian. Does it mean that a mountain that has changed the world, and the martial arts arena, there is absolutely no possibility of cooperation with Luo Pao Mountain? Coupled with that Qin Jianxian's tit-for-tat confrontation and uncompromising, it was enough to suffocate the suffocating that there was no discussion today. For a while, in the big wood view, the clouds were turbulent, and the undercurrent was surging. Zhao Yuran, the emperor of Dongyue Mountain in green robe and golden armor, said, "The discussion has already begun, and today's agenda has already been finalized. Jiang Quan wants to take revenge, and he can wait until the discussion is over." Zhongyue Mountain Lord Jing Fengzhou nodded and said, "There should be some rules." Zhou Shuzhen pretended to be surprised and said, "Didn't we just start the discussion? How come the agenda is finalized today? Could it be that the 5 Shanjins closed the door to discuss the content?" Wu Kei sneered, And the white-haired old man sat with his knives in both hands. I don't know what the reckless people like us are sitting here to figure out. Are we just making up the numbers? Bayua Shanjun, who was wearing a crane cloak and holding a whisk in his hand, the master of the Jade Ultima, changed his hands to hold the whisk. The air was full of brilliance, and the track of the whisk was long-lasting. Feet, sect leader Gao should have read the agenda now. We must not let Qin Shanju misunderstand that we are full of rude people here. These gangs will use force to offend the barren underworld, which is so vulgar. They only know how to shout, fight and kill. Shanjun Siya, who looks like a young scholar, squinted his eyes and smiled and said, "It's inappropriate for Master Jade to say that. It's easy for my family to misunderstand that Siya has taken refuge with Shanju Qin behind our backs." How chilling. Master Jade snorted coldly. As far as you, Song Huaibao, know how to be a human being, I want to see if Siya still has such a stern character when Luo Pao Mountain is overwhelmed by the army, and the world suffers from pain. After Song Huaibao sat down today, his attention was always on the beautiful women like Pei Xiang and Sun Wanyan. When he saw Gao Jun at the beginning of the year, he felt that he belonged to him, and felt that she was his appointed Taoist companion, but this trip to Autumn Lake, he had a little more candidates for Taoist companions. Just a man, how can you like the new and hate the old? Song Huaibao was a little more regretful. The right side of Sui, who was said to have turned to cultivating Taoism to become a sword immortal in Luo Pao Mountain, did not participate in this discussion. As the lord of the Fox country, Peixiang's face was ashen, and she was very angry. She reached out and grabbed the handle of the chair, staring at the old owner of the admiring building opposite. Zhou Shuzhen's mother-in-law turned against the water without any warning, and chose to be the chaotic thief. Pei Xiang was like eating a fly poop. She felt extremely uncomfortable and aggrieved. Over the years, Hu Kingdom has always had a good relationship with Jinjianglu, who has mastered all kinds of espionage and landscape insider information in the world. So it is conceivable to what extent Pei Xiang is in a bad mood at the moment. What's more, Pei Xiang still has a bit of a guilty conscience, just because Hu Guo took the initiative to contact Jinjiangla back then, and Luo Fumei, one of her most reliant direct disciples, had privately reminded her master a few words, such as cooperating with Jinjianglu. It's best to be refreshing and refreshing. Fox Country uses snow to buy information, negotiated the price, and every time the money and goods are received, don't get involved too deeply. And don't think about the future when Fox Country lifts the ban and opens the door, and you can use Jingyang Lu Xing. It is convenient, not to mention the idea of taking the reverence building into the pocket and becoming a vassal of the Fox Country down the mountain. In particular, it is necessary to strictly prohibit the monks and guardians of the cave who have gone abroad to experience any contact with the Jinjianglu. It can't be said that Pei Xiang did not listen to Luo Fumia's suggestion at all. Pei Xiang mentioned a few things and discussing matters in the Patriarch's Hall with the plaque, Qingqiu Hall. Just discounting Luo Fumia's suggestion, according to Peixiang's decree, that is, when doing espionage business with Jinjianglu, our Hu Kingdom needs to pay attention to a fair price. The flames of war, the arrogant and domineering power-related politics, the real person who protects the country with soldiers like gods and who can call the wind and the rain, the woman from the countryside who brought disaster to the country and the people, usurped the throne and proclaimed the emperor, and countless legends of the gods and the gods. Zhong Qian sighed softly. In fact, he was not in a relaxed mood. This hometown is not only a child with thin arms and skinny legs, but also a strong and healthy adult. It's just that the former was lucky and met a latter who likes to reason. Zhong Qian has been outside and has been on the mountain for so long. This golden-bodied martial artist who seems to let me lie down and enjoy happiness, please don't help, every day, has been listening, watching and thinking. It may be that the old cook saw that he was sensible, and he was not so stupid that there was no cure. Once in the courtyard to enjoy the cool and enjoy the moon, the old cook asked Zhong Qian to think about a question: how has the hometown changed? Zhong Qian just shook her head and said she didn't know, and asked the old cook to talk. Zhu Lian smiled and said that there are spiritual currents circulating between heaven and earth, so there are qi refiners and gods of mountains and rivers. Master Shui, and these gifts are all given by us, Luo Peishan. It can't be said that they are all selfless, just being a good fortune boy, but if I really want to collect a debt with you, it's at most 1 out of 10, and more. The business of giving, not to mention the take one, is more of those unknown treasures of heaven and earth, or some cultivator embryos who voluntarily leave the blessed land and seek the Tao, which are immortal seedlings, and ground materials. At the entrance of the Taoist temple, Jiang Shenxi always maintained a strange posture of drawing his sword but not sheathing it. Those who can be invited to participate in the discussion of the Demogwen are all people and the old rivers and lakes, and they have finally guessed the truth one after another. Jiang Shenxi gritted his teeth and said, "Chen Jianxian, don't you even let me draw a knife?" Chen Pingan smiled and asked back, "Isn't it good at learning, and my skills are not as good as others? Is there any reason?" Chao Ni said solemnly, "Why does Chen Jianxian humiliate people like this? I didn't ask you to stand up or sit back down. You surprise me first, and I'll surprise you with a snack. It's a courtesy, and it's not an insult." Chen Pingan didn't turn his head, just put his hands behind him and looked at Jiang Quan at the door. "Of course, if you think this is an insult, I can't stop it. As long as you are willing to change your mouth, you will have Chao Ni in a group fight later. I'll change my mind and let you sit down immediately." If it weren't for this revenge that Jiang Quan came to the door, Zhou Shu would not hesitate to die to earn a little bit of cheapness for his hometown and the world. Chen Pingan had a draft for a long time. If he wants to speak clearly, he must first solve the problems left over from history. After all, to talk about one truth, it is more than this truth. Lotus flower blessed land, for those exiled immortals who came here to experience the red dust or play in the world, and wantonly disturb the order of the world, it can be said that they deeply hate them to the core. The predecessors planted the tree and the later generations enjoyed the shade. Similarly, if the predecessors left a mess, the later generations have to help wipe the buttocks, unless they do not take over. Chen Pingan also allowed Gao Jun and the others to give themselves a disgrace. For example, at the beginning of the game, they put on a posture of asking for guilt, turning over old accounts, and directly linking all the exiled immortals who had been to their own Luopa mountain. Not being shabby, asking for a price and paying back the money on the ground is all reasonable. He also understands the unwillingness of Zhou Shuzhen and Jin Jianglu, unwilling that all sentient beings in this world seem to have an exact price attached to them, goods. But we have to sit down and have a good chat. The two sides have discussions on everything. If we can agree on something, we will quickly finalize it. If we cannot agree, we will put it on hold for the time being. This is called discussion. Otherwise, why would he come to Demogwen alone? Let Zhu Lian and Chief Zhou sit, and then let Xiaomao or Xiego sit, and then you can make trouble as you like. Find a few nurses in advance, such as Nanyuan State Supreme Emperor Wei Liang or whoever. If a disagreement is reached in a discussion, they will fight. This is not called fishing, but a catch. Together with the emperors of the four kingdoms, they were all imprisoned. Pure warriors were imprisoned for 10 or 20 years, while chi practitioners and landscape spirits were imprisoned for 100 and several hundred years. Without more than 30 of you, is the lotus root blessed land still a blessed land, and the human world is still the human world. Song Huaibao had already kicked his boots and sat cross-legged. He was the least upright among the 5 mountain monarchs. The Xia Shanjun, who once said last night, "If you don't keep secrets, lose your country, you'll lose your life if you don't keep secrets." Today, he has turned into a lazy again. Unlike other people who are busy changing their minds and assessing the situation, Song Huaihua, who is also not idle, is looking here and there, feasting his eyes. The women participating in the discussion today, except for the old woman Mountain Wang Ji on the border of the northern Jin kingdom, the rest are all good-looking, beautiful in appearance, thin or plump, each with its own merits. His territory under the jurisdiction of Xie has many overlapping territories with the mountains and rivers of Nanyuan, but Wei and the girl in the dragon robe once secretly climbed the mountain, but they were closed. But after gathering a lot of ghosts, Song Huaibao took the initiative to secretly enter the capitals of Nanyuan and Songlai several times, as well as local prefectures, to investigate the customs of today's world. In fact, even the members who are qualified to participate in the discussion of Demogwen are the first time to see the mountain monarch who has the cultivation realm of the 5 realms and the scope of the clergy. Not just some people who went to the main hall of the Wiyue temple to burn incense and brought back a golden statue above the hand-painted hanging statue. The last time Gao Jun returned to the blessed land, he pointed out a road for each of the 5 mountain lords, and explained in detail the many mysteries of the people's incense sacrifice and how to temper the golden body. She took the lead in drawing the boundaries of the 5 mountains and dividing them into states, clarifying the boundaries, and taking a certain mountain and a certain water as the boundary. Gao Jun then followed the Haoran world Confucian ritual books copied by himself to explain what is the eternal cycle of the 5 virtues. The reason why the 5 sacred mountains are called Yu without saying why is the mountain. The monarch of a small country in Zhozhou can make a king for the 5 mountains in his country, a big dynasty can make an emperor, and only the Confucian temple of Zhongtu can seal the 5 mountains as a sacred king. And Gao Jun also helps Wiyue Shanjun clearly fix the rituals, location and time of the sacrifices of the 5 sacred mountains. Most of them were copied from ancient books by Gao Jun, and a few were used. That's why Wiyue Shanjun thinks so much about Gao Jun and the Hushan faction. Gao Jun is the one who is truly willing and able to achieve great things for this world. The child's appearance are the strangest one, with sackcloth sandals and basil in the waist. You are the lord of Nanyue Mountain, just because he is too small, so he sits there without touching the ground with his feet. The seat is located at the southernmost side among the colleagues of the 5 mountains, so the position is next to the Demogwen Gonghua. Beside Gonghua, Sun Wanyan, who was at the bottleneck of watching the sea, bent the back of his hand, raised his fingers, and whistled, teasing the well-behaved bird that fluttered softly but did not fly high. This female chi cultivator, who just opened a mountain stand party and played a banner not long ago, is very leisurely and has nothing to do with herself. The ancestral temple is located in the mountain goddess Wang Ji, the goddess of the mountain at the border of the 2 countries. Qing Yuanshan was still admiring Chao Ni's courage just now, but now he began to feel sorry for Chao Ni, who couldn't even sit down. Otherwise, you have spoken rhetorically, and you have given up your harsh words. What's the result? Are you embarrassed or not? Zhou Shu really felt powerless and tried it quietly. It seemed that Chen Jianxian didn't stop her from taking her seat again. Gao Jun, who was sitting at the main seat, tried to speak several times, but he was hesitant to say anything, for fear that he would not be able to smooth things out, but instead added fuel to the fire. Originally, regarding the opening remarks, she practiced and drafted in her mind repeatedly about the content of today's discussion. Gao Jun knew very well that no matter what the respected Lu Zhou and Wu Fu Chao Ni said or did, in fact, with her understanding of Qin Pingan, she would not completely tear her face, but if she said the wrong thing, it would be very difficult to end it, and even some maybe the beginning is the end, and there is no need to talk about it at all. On the nearby Luodai Island, Guyuexian, a private house specially given to the Hu Kingdom by Demogwen, once Pei Xiang left, there was only a long life left. The girl in the mink hat sat on the railing of the viewing platform, watching the ghost who dared not show her true face on the island, walked up the steps, looked at the posture, and was murderous. Xiago said with a smile, Guyuexian, Guyuehu, homophonic fox, this Lake Master Gonghua really can figure it out. This doesn't mean Chuchi Lake scolded Fox Country face to face for being a litter of foxes. Changming smiled and said, probably Gonghua feels that since the top of Peixiang Mountain is called the Hu Country, he must not care about this. Besides, the outside world is not clear about the Hu Country. Guozhuzhou suddenly said, from the master of the Fox Country Peixiang to the disciples Luo Fumei and Qiu Qing, and then a little extrapolation, to the whole Fox Country style and habits, the deeper they hide in the master's side, the better the disguise, the more trembling they are, for fear of saying the wrong word, the more they will bounce back inside and outside the Fox Country. Xiago originally wanted to say something to the leader of his alliance, but when he thought of the poor end of the white-haired boy, and now he didn't know that he had been removed from the private pedigree, the sable-cap girl had to shut up, but don't just stop at the top of her own mountain. There is only one leader of the Guo alliance left, and there are generals and generals who are free to sit in the big tent and no small pawns. Xiago stretched his neck to look at the Taoist temple, listened to Guomengbi's teachings, nodded, Changming continued to ask, do you think Wei Liang and his Taoist companions' unresolved corners took the initiative to walk up to the mountain master before discussing matters? Is it due to etiquette? Guozhuzhou smiled and said, the number of rituals is the number of rituals, and the storm is also the storm. It was all deliberately done by Wei Liang. After all, he was a person who was the emperor of a country. As for the master, he was good at talking, so he pushed the boat along the way. Half of it was to help Wei Liang teach the other Lake Jiao, who would definitely act nonsense in the future, so that she would not be too ignorant. Please, because Wei Liang must have figured out this discussion, and their side will not have any good fruit to eat. Changming smiled and said, why is it destined to have no good fruit to eat? Our mountain master is here to discuss matters well. Guozhuzhou said, Wei Liang knows my master's character, and he knows the character of everyone in his hometown. Changming asked, then do you think the mountain master will do it? Guozhuzhou grinned, this question is so boring, master has already given the answer, what is the biggest villain? Xiago asked softly, Guozhuzhou, all the sword cultivators who came out of the summer palace are like you? You can't enter the summer palace. Guozhuzhou patted Xiago's arm, and the girl's pointed chin rested on the railing, but you don't have to go to the summer palace to waste time. If you are a native sword cultivator in my hometown, I can guarantee that no matter whether you are white, Jing or Xiago will definitely be very popular, even more popular than Lu Ji's long legs, not only because of your high swordsmanship and being one of the top 10 swordsmen in the city, but also because of your very likable personality. It is what we recognize the most, not afraid of the sky, not afraid of the earth, it is pure sword repair. Maybe there is a female sword immortal on the top of the city in my hometown. Xiago crossed his arms around his chest and laughed, that's it, what a pity the bird. Based on Guozhuzhou's words alone, if the Great Wall of Sword Qi was still there today, and all the sword cultivators were there, she might just travel far away with the sword and go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi to be a foreign sword cultivator guarding the city. It must be engraved, she must be able to kill 2 wild Ascension Realm monsters, instead of riding Bai Jing, just riding Xiaomo. Wow, is there a better love letter than this? On the shore of Chuchi Lake, the swordsman Wu Jiang, the old is still fishing Yuan Huang, and the mountain goddess Yuan Jiatsao of the begging flower field in Dai Mountain, the Taoist name is Green Waste. Wu Jiang said, it's easy to talk, but I'll ask Chen Jianxian for a few more pots of Xianzhou wine. It's not that I'm bragging and not drafting. Yuan Huang nodded with a smile and looked ahead, remember to ask Chen Jianxian for a few more pots, I have a good alcohol capacity, or I don't drink, I will get drunk. Yang Lui, Chuanong wine, fortunate to meet one or two people, how can I not be so drunk mud? Wu Jiang rubbed his chin, steal my words. Yuan Huang pointed his toes a little, and his body was long and swept like a bird skimming the water. He laughed loudly, bag again, I don't know how to write, goddess of the mountain, remember to help me look after the fish basket. Wu Jianghuai held the scabbard, smiled, and followed Yuan Huang to the hostile island. Yuan Jutzao sat on the spot and agreed with a smile, letting Yuan Huang rest assured to be the thief who climbed the wall, but he was expelled by immortal Master Demogwen at that time. Although I don't know why Chen Jianxian, who was exiled from a foreign land, went to the Damu temple this time, it doesn't seem like he sat down and drank some drinks before leaving the venue. But deep down in the heart of this mountain goddess, there is only one thought. I believe that he will not be too disappointed when he has seen young Jianghu people like Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang, right? Anyway, she thinks that there are young people like Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang on the rivers and lakes, which is a very beautiful and interesting thing. Wei Liang touched a gray nose by the lake. After that Qin Shanzhu went to Demogwen first, he first rescued the drowning Taoist companion Jijiao, and hugged her to ride the wind all the way away from the Chuchi lake. He stopped at the top of a green mountain in the northern Jin kingdom near Chuchi lake, and fell down. There are Taoist temples in the mountains, but there are no Qi practitioners. They are all ordinary masters. He was actually the first time he got the invitation. So she sneaked here with a girl in a dragon robe secretly, and stalked in a hidden place in the mountain. There were few people, the wind was cold, and there were often tigers and leopards. Wei Liang also repeatedly told her not to easily reveal her whereabouts, so as not to deal with the imperial courts of the two countries too early. Broke some of his layout plans. The two parties are Taoist companions in name, but they are actually more like Taoist friends with the same aspirations and interests. It is agreed that in the future, both parties will be equivalent to the realm of the current Hushan school Gao Jun, so they will look for several Taoist yin and yang complementary techniques in the room and truly become Tao companion, hold a big banquet, and then open a sect. In fact, the girl in the dragon robe who named herself Hu Jiao at that time thought it was strange, so she asked Wei Liang, are you talking about the establishment of a sect? Is it different from Kai Shan Li Pai? Wei Liang was silent for a long time, and then he said that the outside world, the immortal mansion on the mountain, has the largest sect and the largest teaching. It is not the same as the sect and religion of the Jianghu sect on our side. A young girl asked worriedly, Dad, what's going on? Wei Liang smiled and said, it's okay, Hu Jiao was only slightly injured. On the side of the thatched hut today, there is another Qi cultivator who is not young but looks like a girl, Wei Jin, who is Wei Liang's daughter. As the princess of Nanyuan Kingdom, Wei Jin is different from her elder brother Wei Yan, who has long been enthroned as emperor. She has the aptitude for Taoism, and she is quite good. According to Wei Liang's estimation, with the Taoist secret books collected by the Nanyuan Kingdom's court, Wei Jin will open up a cave in the future and accept the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It is not an extravagant hope. The favor of the Lord, and he generally ranks in the Dragon Gate realm, which is only a line away from the Golden Pill, is a certain degree of certainty. Wei Jin habitually stretched out his hand to give Hu Jiao a pulse and nodded, the weather is stable, it's really nothing serious. It's just that when Wei Jin used more of his own spiritual energy and tried to treat the girl in the dragon robe according to the Zhuyu Shu written in a certain secret book, in an instant, there was a burning sensation of severe pain in Wei Jin's fingertips. Shaking his arms vigorously, he managed to dispel the stinging pain that felt like a fingertip touching a hot coal fire. Wei Jin was worried, and asked in a deep voice, Father, who did she provoke? The sequelae are great. Wei Liang hesitated for a moment, then said in his heart, it's Qin Pingan. Wei Jin was stunned for a while, then covered his mouth and smiled, it's okay, luckily fortunate. Wei Liang was in a complicated mood and said with a smile, "If there is a chance, it'll take you to invite Chen Jianxian for a drink and a meal." His own thoughts must not be hidden from Chen Pingan, who was scheming when he was young and saved dangers, so the only one who can really use it against Chen Shanzhu is a simple-minded person like Wei Jin. Wei Liang is different from any local qi refiner. Because he was secretly in charge of the Nanyuan country's fine writing and clearing the way, he used to drink and chat with a sword immortal named Xiao Jun. In Qiao Jiangxian's mouth, he pulled out a lot of inside information about the world outside, but it was the Jiang family's children who were said to be from the blessed land of Yunku, and they were all tight-lipped, and it was extremely difficult to communicate. However, apart from Qiao Jun, who claimed to be the same as Chen Pingan, but grew up in a place called Nanpo Suozhou, there was a crow who was no stranger to Wei Liang at that time. He was born in the magic sect and once walked into Nanyuan with Ding Ying. Could it be that the achievement of the great Tao in this life stopped at the bottleneck of the Dragon Gate realm, but he was still unable to form the elixir to achieve the Earth Immortal realm? In those days when his heart was burning and his mind was unstable, when Wei Liang was teaching the long worm in the mountain, he occasionally looked at it, which always liked to squawk quietly, and he couldn't help it. His eyes were cold, and he had murderous intentions in his heart. He wondered if it was because of its appearance, while vying for a part of the dragon energy in the imperial mausoleum, it also took away the luck that should belong to him. After thinking about it, Wei Liang decided to retreat for the last time. If he still can't form a golden elixir, it is my generation, then it is no wonder that he is ruthless, killing snakes to disperse dragon energy, and then by himself swallowing dragon energy and refining it into himself. Good luck. In the last retreat, he still failed to break through and form an elixir, but when Wei Liang saw the mountain snake again, he was surprised. It turned out that it had been successfully refined and became a naked mountain girl. When he saw Wei Liang, she pointed to the contents of a Taoist book she had written by herself, babbled, the words were still vague, and Wei Liang smiled and bowed her head to her, calling her a Taoist friend. Although Wei Liang could sense that the contemporary head of the Hushan school, Gao Jun, had already formed the pill one step ahead, but when Wei Liang saw it, or her, Wei Liang did not want to kill. Now, just to comfort myself by saying that my generation of cultivators have their own destiny. Later, under the protection of Wei Liang and the court of Nanyuan Kingdom, Hu Jiao appeared in a place where mountains and rivers depended on each other. Wei Liang thought that he was the right place and the power of the people, but in fact, this was the way of the world, and he deliberately opened up the net for her. It is precisely because Hu Jiao is the first walking the river in the world that she has a good fortune in the right place and the right place. Otherwise, in the vast world, even if a mountain snake absorbs the dragon energy and wants to walk through the water to turn into a flood dragon, the previous blessings and good fortune will be transformed into the same or even greater natural disasters and calamities during the water walk. It is not a matter of perseverance. Experienced great hardships and failed to succeed. Therefore, after her, there are still a few daffodils belonging to the mountains and lakes. They want to draw the scoops according to the gourd, and use the water to shape the bodies of Zhou and Jiao. But without exception, they have gone through ups and downs and failed, only to say that one of them, a giant python as thick as a pillar, at the end of the mighty water, in the stormy weather with lightning and thunder, there was a steep mountain directly beside the water. Going down, like a big tree crossing the river, not to mention blocking the way, the top of the mountain also hit the body of the giant python that had begun to shed its skin and had faint horns on its forehead. 7 inches, a river-walking python that caused the flood was killed on the spot, the body floated, drifting with the water, and the chi refiner who hid aside divided up the huge body. I can't help but let the Taoist people in the mountains look up at the sky with awe. It is really impermanent. It is no wonder that there is a mountain of monsters in the books of the immortal family, and there must be 3 disasters and 7 disasters to survive the catastrophe. Wei Liang turned his head, and Hu Jiao was already awake in the room. The girl in the dragon robe got out of bed and walked out of the room. Her expression was gloomy, her brows were full of resentment. Of course, she still had lingering fears. Wei Liang said calmly, "It's up to you to listen or not. I'll just say one thing, don't have any thoughts of trying to find a way back." Hu Jiao was in a bad mood, and when she heard this, she was even more angry. She screamed, "Wei Liang, it's a good thing you have a good character in your name, you old man with no conscience, don't help me and help outsiders." Wei Zhen is already used to it, covering his ears with his hands and just arguing with you. After all, this girl in a dragon robe is still his father's future Taoist companion and his own stepmother and little mother. Wei Liang said indifferently, "Hu Jiao, let me see how your mood has changed over the years. If it's still the same, not only do I want to completely separate my relationship with you, but you and Nanyuan Kingdom also need to draw a clear line. After that, you can be a mountain monarch on the lake, wearing a dragon robe and sitting on a dragon chair, canonizing the prime minister and hundreds of officials, like a female emperor. Just continue to make waves and do whatever you want regardless of the consequences. But in the future, if you are with a mountain monarch of a country, or pass by if there is a conflict between the Qi trainer you are here, or there is a dispute with who the great Tao is, it is impossible for me and the Wei family's court to help. You know my temper, and I will definitely do it when I say it." Hu Jiao felt the repressed anger in Wei Liang's flat expression, and suddenly became completely arrogant. He sat beside Wei Liang without speaking, but leaned his head on his shoulder. Wei Zhen sighed, "It's no wonder that my mother hasn't set foot in Nanyuan country for many years, she's so sad." Wei Liang patted her on the head lightly and began to be dazed. "Young and energetic, I just feel that by myself, with my bare hands and 2 fists, I can hit a world, and there are always beauties everywhere. The old man Wu Kei and his like, what great things can be done, after a few decades, they will be a handful of lusts." As for Tang Tie, the emperor of the Northern Jin dynasty, he had nearly 100,000 elite troops under his command, and he was not inferior to the elite cavalry of Nanyuan. The king of a country, who is both a martial arts master and a Qi refiner, does not still need to go to the mountain temple alone at night, and at the same time put on the Xianjia armor that has always been kept secret, and then wear the sword refiner to see the real name in person. Wang Fan's mountain goddess. There is a considerable amount of gold mines buried in a mountain range. What is gold can't be simpler, it is a warhorse armored weapon, and it is national strength. This is the root cause that really makes Tang Tie and other heroes have to swallow their anger obediently. What if the city god of a state in this country is gone, so what? Believe it or not, if Tang Tai's trip to the Axe Mountain is too late, Tuoba Days in the north will personally lead his troops southward, knock on the border of the Northern Jin dynasty, and then come to cooperate with the old lady Wang Dustpan of the Mountain Temple, from the Northern Jin dynasty. A large piece of fat is cut off the border of the country. Tang Tie was originally a country that was not upright. The remnants of the old royal family in the Northern Jin kingdom and the remnants of the older dynasties have not died yet. As long as the borders are unstable, so that the emperor is required to drive by himself, the capital of the Northern Jin kingdom will be so lively, just relying on Tang Tai's ambitious and talented son. Can he really supervise the country? On the surface, the crown prince would not be able to supervise the country without him, but in fact it would be even worse. When Tang Tie returned to the court, maybe half of the officials in the temple center of the capital had already died, and all of them were ruined by the high-ranking crown prince, who was named Qianlong. Wei Liang regained his senses and took a deep breath. Compared with the above, the state of Nanyuan was a bit better than the other 3 countries. Today's son Wei Yan, who belongs to Zhen's abdication to the throne, is good in both Wen Tao and martial arts. The key is that this son is very patient. In the past, the temple team left by the national teacher Chongshou was also considered a gathering of civil and martial arts. As for whether the Wei family could eventually rule the world, it depends on the destiny. Wei Liang suddenly turned to look at Wei Zhen. Wei Zhen didn't know what to do, but his body stiffened in an instant, and a storm surged between the lakes in his heart. He slowly turned his head and saw a young man in a Confucian shirt with a face like a crown of jade. Hu Jiao whispered, "It seems that there is another one on the roof." "It's hard to say anything, just stand up, people have nothing to say and look at the mountains." The young man in the Confucian shirt put his hands in his sleeves, leaned forward slightly, and took the lead in laughing. "It's really hard to be a friend of Taoist Wei. I haven't been an emperor for many years, and I still have to work so hard and work hard for thousands of years for the Wei family's country and for future generations. Descendants make rice and dice. If you live in the mountains to cultivate Taoism, but the Taoist heart is outside the mountains, it is normal to fail to form elixir, and it has nothing to do with qualifications. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Gu Can. Gu is the one who looks forward to the future, and the beautiful Can, the guy on the roof and I both come from outside. We just came here from the Hushan faction, the kind of exiled immortals that you can't die, and everyone can kill them." The tall man on the roof with his feet hanging outside the house laughed and scolded, "Slug, scolding yourself not to take me, I am a serious and upright scholar." He jumped off the roof, rotated his body in the air, stood with his feet still, his anger sank into his dantian, and said with a smile, "I have something to learn, I have to introduce myself, the content is a bit long, there are no more than 100 words, and I can't tell my identity. The background realm, listen carefully. Wei Liang doesn't have to take it too seriously, the little girl in the dragon robe. Forget it, looking young is actually old. And she is an old girl who belongs to her heart, the one sitting next to Gu Can. That means you, little girl, you have to up your ears and listen." Gu Can had already said, his name is Lu Xianyang, and he is about to get married. He is a coward who has only a tough mouth all over his body. After finally slipping out, he doesn't dare to go to the brothel to drink flower wine. Lu Xianyang cursed, "Gu Can, your uncle." Gu Can nodded, "Uncle is here, you kowtow a few times, and I will make up for the New Year's money." Lu Xianyang ignored this little who broke the platform, and looked at Wei Liang with a smile, "Listen to my advice, it is only at a later age that you know the most misleading character of immortals. It turns out that this body only fits between two mountains." Gu Can smiled and said, "I use the poems from other people's books. I know that 3 words are wrong in my later years, and I only live in 2 mountains in my life." Wei Zhen suddenly realized and said, "I heard about it, but unfortunately the author of the poem is anonymous." Gu Can squinted his eyes, as expected. Lu Xianyang still looked like he was hanging around. "It's a pity, it would be better if you were fortunate enough to meet this person, and then paint a portrait of the character." The girl in the dragon robe had been taught a lesson by the Chuchi Lake, and she was afraid of the rope after being bitten by a snake for 10 years, but just listening to the two of them talking indifferently over there, she became a little wild. It was hard to tame, but she was about to speak, and before Wei Liang could stop her, the young scholar who called himself Gu Can had already reminded, "Speaking the wrong words and doing the wrong things will kill people." Lu Xianyang glanced at Gu Can, coughed, and said, "It's all right, what are you doing to scare a little girl who is watching the sea?" His mother, Chen Pingan, is not here. Gu Can really wants to kill the heart, kill the Lake Jiao easily, pat his and walk away, just don't drink wedding wine, even the best man, isn't he Uncle Lu? Sitting wax. Gu Can twitched the corners of his mouth, and seemed to have listened. Lu Xianyang said, "Change the place and go to Chuchi Lake to take a look." Gu Can shook his head, "What are you going to do? Don't beg for scolding." Having said that, Guken had already stood up, go to the Sia Mountain Monarch Mansion to see. Lu Xianyang slapped his fist with a fist, let's say it earlier, hurry up. The two strange characters who claimed to be exiled from the outside world came and went in a hurry. The two rainbow lights instantly traveled thousands of miles away, and the sea of clouds not far from the mountain was cut open by a long sword. The green mountain under Wei Liang and the others shook violently, like a muffled thunder, with beasts crawling on the mountain, birds flying high, and the bells and drums of Taoist temples in the mountain shook violently, melodiously chirping. Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang sneaked into the hostile island, and swaggered up to the top of the mountain. They came right, and they had a wide field of vision. They were close to the big wooden temple on Zushan. But soon there was a female crowned girl and a young Taoist boy, with feet like clouds and water, and quickly came to the top of the mountain. They made a bow. The girl looked at Wu Jiang, and she said in a clear voice, Wu Jiang, our Taoist temple is in charge of. There is an order, I implore you to leave the hostile island quickly. Wu Jiang was stunned for a moment, waited, and when he saw the little girl, he had nothing to say, so he had to ask, it's okay to drive me away, and Yuan Huang, who is next to me, why don't you drive me down the mountain together? Yuan Huang smiled and did not speak. The girl was also stunned. She had to explain patiently to the fool, Yuan Huang was originally an honored guest invited by our Taoist temple to board the hostile island. Wu Jiang stretched out his hand and wiped his face from top to bottom. He didn't speak, turned around and left. He was rude to people, and he had such a bad friend on the stall. He still wanted to drink Xianjia wine and drink urine. Yuan Huang turned around and smiled and said, where are you going? According to the Taoist example, guests who are invited to land on the island can bring 1 or 2 friends to stay here. Right, 2 Taoist immortal officials? The young Taoist priest was still a little gloomy, but the girl nodded and said, our Taoist temple has this rule, Master Yuan, is that Wu Shaoxia really your friend? Wu Jiang, who had already slowed down, heard that Master Yuan and Wu Shaoxia, the wind was blowing under his feet, and he walked like flying, so he couldn't wait any longer. Yuan Huang nodded and said, Wu Jiang is one of my few close friends. If the Taoist temple wants to check his identity or something, I will follow him down the mountain. After getting off the hostile island, we went directly to Demugwen. Wu Jiang smiled brightly all of a sudden, turned around and strode forward, turned back on the same road, walked to Yuan Huang's side, and patted the other party's shoulder heavily. Good brother, you really shouldn't play with guns, you should go to practice swords. Yuan Huang wondered, how do you say it? Could it be that Chen Jianxian saw that he had the aptitude to practice swords? Only let Wu Jiang relay this matter. Wu Jiang laughed out loud, and the girl squinted and smiled. She obviously heard Wu Jiang's implication. In the Demugwen, when the sword immortal in green shirt and Jiang Quan were in a stalemate, there was a vision, and a long golden line was seen winding like a dragon in the sky, rushing aggressively. The magic weapon of tying the immortal rope suddenly hit the neck of the sword immortal in green shirt. If he was a little careless, Chen Pingan would be strangled by his neck. If you are beaten until your spiritual energy is dissipated or your true energy is stagnant, as for the evil spirits that cannot be seen, they will end up vanishing. After she started, she sacrificed this rare magic weapon that was unsatisfactory, and a female chi cultivator in the middle said with a sneer, this immortal really doesn't believe in evil, the so-called land sword immortal in the book is really invincible so far, and it's really as rumored. Just talking about this, the female nun was speechless and could no longer say a word, because she did not dare to continue. It turned out that the golden immortal binding rope had indeed successfully circled the sword immortal in blue, who was standing still, and it should have been tightened suddenly to bind his neck. It's a pity that the sky didn't go according to people's wishes, but the real scene is that the rope is like a snake's tail, hanging in the air, shining and eye-catching, and it is beautiful to look good, but it has never been able to get close to the neck of the blue-shirt man, like a bundle of golden snake's body. The immortal rope slammed into the wall everywhere, making a squeaking sound, and it was worn out into a burst of beautiful gold shards. Fellow Taoist wants to say, you can spit out a sword pill, fly a sword thousands of miles away and take the head, killing people without a trace. Chen Pingon moved slightly and smiled. The answer is yes. Just because of such a subtle action by Sword Immortal in Qingshan, some people feel that they have seen the truth. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. A 6th-level martial artist who is extremely arrogant about his body speed, he just feels that they are grinding and chirping, and they are talking nonsense. I'm not very happy. The famous Jiang Hu first got up and rushed to deliver the punch. He was already wearing a blue shirt. Then he laughed loudly, Chen, take a punch. The punch is not light, and the body is faster. Bang! The old master felt like he was hit by a heavy hammer in the abdomen, his feet were hanging in the air, and when someone reached out and patted his head, he thumped and turned into a funny posture that he couldn't afford to kneel on the spot. It's not your ancestor, and it's not a big New Year's Eve, so let's go. The blue shirt slowly raised his foot, and with a slight swipe, he kicked the pale and colorless old master across the door of the Taoist temple, slammed into the wall, and fell to the ground. Chen Pingon smiled and said, reminder, next time I ask someone about boxing, it's better to replace take me a punch with please enlighten me, with fewer words and more expert demeanor. The old master, who only felt that he had fallen apart, was just about to scold his mother with all his might, but everyone didn't see how the man in the blue shirt was moving, and he slammed his head against the wall again, his eyes turned white, and he lay on the ground and went to sleep. The female Qi cultivator saw that her own treasure was unable to see the merit, so she took back the immortal binding rope and said in a trembling voice, Chen Jianxian, you are offended. Chen Pingon nodded. After holding it with one hand, he grabbed the immortal binding rope of the high-grade spiritual tool with the other hand. With a light touch, the entire golden rope was instantly dimmed and finally turned into ashes. Drift. Learn from you, shoot first, then speak. Chen Pingon smiled and said, to add one more sentence, there is much offense. The female cultivator was dumbfounded and speechless. Such a heavy treasure, how hard it is to refine it, and I treat it like a second life, so it's gone. As he spoke, Chen Pingon looked at the burly old man with white hair, who seemed to be called Wu Kei, who was much older than Zhong Qian, and his position was not too far from Zhong Qian. Wu Kei's face flushed red, so angry that the temples on both sides of the old man's head agitated. Just because the young man in the green shirt was struggling and moved, Wu Kei and the Jianghu Grandmaster had the same plan, but Wu Kei got a reminder, otherwise it would be him who would kneel and kowtow to his ancestors. Chen Pingon said with a smile, you guys have made enough troubles, so should I talk about it? With a wave of his sleeve, he smashed Zhang Quan, who had never been able to draw his sword out of the scabbard, out of the Taoist temple and fell into the autumn Qi lake. I stand and talk, and you sit and watch the play. Is this how you treat guests in this world? Chen Pingon stomped his foot again, and all the members of the Demoguen Council, except Pei Xiang, Gao Jun, Zhong Qian, Wu Shanjun, and an unexpected Sun Wanyan, were forced to stand up. Look, in a world, there are only so many ounces. Your patience is too poor, you don't know that you will face me after 300 or 500 years. Step on the ground slightly. Sitting temporarily, all stood up. Let your Wu Shanjun use your natal supernatural powers to connect with the roots of the island, and then try to connect with the Chuchi lake by water. Shaking his sleeves, he picked up his robe, and only sat alone in a green shirt. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.